Chapter 580. The fake was real, and the real was fake. Truth and falsehood were often more unfathomable, making it impossible to detect the problem. It also made it impossible for anyone to suspect Fengzichen. The chaos of the innate beasts broke out in the boundless starry sky. They were worried about Zhouxing's safety. It was completely reasonable for the two emperors, Gaochen and Lui's, to rush back to the boundless starry sky. No one would think that there was a problem. This way, it would give the experts of the demonic sects a breather, allowing them to free up their hands to deal with the inner demons. If Lui's and Gaochen did not leave, the experts of the demonic sects would have scruples. How would they dare to show their faces in the primordial world? Only when the two emperors had something to do and left would the experts of the demonic sects dare to walk out from the dark. And something that could make the two emperors leave had to be something that shocked the primordial world and shook its foundation. Otherwise, the purpose would be too obvious. The experts of the demonic sects would definitely not fall for it. Therefore, there was the outbreak of the innate beasts. The boundless starry sky was not only the foundation of Great Emperor Ziwei, but also the foundation of the Great Emperor of the South Pole and Gaochen. Once something happened, the two emperors would have to return to the boundless starry sky to prevent their foundation from being destroyed. When the experts of the demonic sects saw this scene, they would not have any doubts. They would only feel that their opportunity had come, and they would definitely attack the inner demons. Compared to the Xian sect, the experts of the demonic sects hated the inner demons even more, because the inner demons were internal problems. If they were not eliminated in time, then in the future, it was not certain who would be in charge of the demonic sections. This was shaking their foundation. It was even more detestable than the Xian sect. They absolutely could not be left behind. In a mysterious void, the remaining experts of the demonic sects watched as the figures of Gaochen and Luai slowly disappeared into the boundless starry sky. They finally confirmed that the two of them had really left. So, they moved. 6 terrifying figures quietly disappeared and arrived near Mount Meru. The 6 of them spread out according to the directions of the 6 directions, sealing off the east, west, north, and south. They completely blocked all the escape routes. They were determined to kill the inner demons in one fell swoop. However, when they sealed off the 6 directions of heaven and earth and attacked Mount Meru, they realized that the figures left here were all illusions. Damn it! He ran away. An angry voice suddenly came from the void. Immediately after, an invisible force spread out and shattered all of the phantoms. The remaining disciples of the Western sect also shattered along with the illusions. How terrifying was the fury of a chaos demon god. Daoyuo Jingxian was no different from an ant in front of them. With a thought, they could kill him countless times. It just so happened that none of the remaining disciples of the Western sect were Daoyuo Jingxian. They were all in the realm of Tai Jingxian. Note: at this point, none of the third-generation disciples of the Celestial Sect of Wonders had become Daoyuo Jingxian. It doesn't make sense that the Western sect, which is weaker than the 3 sects, has a disciple who can cultivate Daoyuo Jingxian. TSK. In this way, facing the wrath of the chaos demonic god, the remaining disciples of the Western sect were shattered along with the phantoms before they could even scream. Speaking of which, the chaos demonic god was not deliberately targeting them. He was just venting his anger. However, who told them to be so weak? Merely his anger had killed them all. The chaos demon god naturally did not care about that at all. After all, who would care about the life and death of ants? At this point, the disciples of the Western sect were all wiped out, and the 2 saints had become generals without an army. Oh, that's not right either. Not all the disciples of the Western sect had died. At the very least, those disciples who had gone out to travel had escaped because they were not on Mount Meru. That's right. The direct disciples of the 2 saints, relying on the life-saving method bestowed by the saints, they left Mount Meru in time. They did not die in this calamity. However, after this incident, the Western sect was no different from being wiped out. Seeing that the mental demons had left, the 6 chaos demon gods did not want to stay here for long, and wanted to leave. It was not that they did not want to take back the ancestral court of the demon sect, but the conditions did not allow it. They were afraid that as soon as they rebuilt the ancestral court, Heavenly Emperor Haotian and the 4 heavenly emperors would charge over. They could not defend left and right, so why waste their energy to take down Mount Meru? It was better to wait for the demon ancestor Rahu to come out of seclusion before making a plan. However, the 6 chaos demon gods wanted to leave, but someone did not want them to leave. That was because the good and evil corpses that received Zhuan-Ti had rushed back from the chaos beyond the heavens. From afar, the 4 incarnations saw that the remaining disciples of the Western sect had died tragically at the hands of the demon sect experts. In an instant, the eyes of Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti turned red. Monstrous anger erupted from their hearts and directly turned into a substance. It formed a terrifying black flame that burned crazily in the void, emitting waves that could burn everything. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! Furious voices came from the 4 mouths and echoed between heaven and earth, triggering all kinds of shocking phenomena. Swoosh! The 4 of them approached from afar and stopped in front of the 6 chaos demon gods, blocking their path. A great battle was about to break out, and that was Feng Zichen's goal. The mental demons left in advance, and then the chaos demon god rushed over, only to find that he had been tricked. In his anger, he accidentally killed the disciples of the Western sect. Thus, the demon sect was the scapegoat. The mental demons could stay out of the matter and sit and watch the 2 tigers fight. Both sides had enmity with him. No matter which side suffered, Feng Zichen was happy to see it happen. Of course, this plan was not very clever. It could not be hidden from the experts of the demon sect, but they could not explain it. First of all, it was indeed done by the demon sect. Moreover, they were the ones who killed the people. Although there was a misunderstanding, the people did die in their hands. There was no way to explain this point. Moreover, with the pride of the demon sect, they would not allow them to explain. Otherwise, once they explained and said that it was a misunderstanding, wouldn't it be equivalent to them admitting defeat to the Western sect? That was absolutely impossible. When facing the powerful Xian sect, they could still not lower their heads. Now, if they lowered their heads to a branch of the Xian sect, they would be embarrassed to death without the Xian sect doing anything. Therefore, they would definitely take the blame. What about Zhuan-Ti? At that time, they were burning with anger. Perhaps they could not see the twists and turns. However, when they calmed down, they would definitely realize that something was wrong and figure everything out. But so what? Because of this incident, the Western sect and the demon sect had formed a deadly feud. Even if they knew the truth, they would only have one more enemy. Of course, no matter how good Feng Zichen was at scheming, it was impossible for him to calculate the time when Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti's clones returned. In other words, it was a complete accident that the 4 incarnations saw the demon god of chaos kill the disciples of the Western sect. It had nothing to do with Feng Zichen. According to Feng Zichen's original plan, it was just to shift the blame of attacking Mount Meru to the demon sect. However, who knew that the demon sect's luck was so bad that Zhuan-Ti, who had returned, happened to see the scene of his murder? Feng Zichen did not expect such a situation. However, its occurrence undoubtedly made Feng Zichen's plan to shift the blame even more perfect. It could be said to be a stroke of genius. In the face of such a situation, Feng Zichen could not help but sigh. The demon sect was really unlucky. They could even encounter something with such a small probability. The Khanate Bodhi tree and the Khanate mind-clearing divine lotus. On Mount Meru, one of the 6 chaos demon gods stared at Zhuan-Ti for a long time and said, without a doubt, the Khanate Bodhi tree was Taoist Zhuan-Ti's background. As for the Khanate mind-clearing divine lotus, if nothing went wrong, it should be the origin of Taoist Zhuan-Ti. What a big secret. Who would have thought that the chaos demon god would reveal the origin of Saint Jiayin, whose origin no one knew? No wonder Jiayin was so talented and had a very harmonious relationship with Zhuan-Ti. It turned out that he was also a manifestation of a Khanate spiritual root, the Khanate mind-clearing divine lotus, one of the top 10 Khanate spiritual roots of the primordial world. It could allow one to maintain a clear Tao heart and be closer to the great Tao. It was indeed the number 1 auxiliary spiritual root in the primordial world. At this moment, The great mystical abilities who were paying attention to the situation there perked up after hearing the Chaos Demon God's words. They focused their attention there, and waited for the Chaos Demon God's next words. As soon as they met, the origins of Xuanti and Xuanti were completely exposed. What about after that? It could not be said. The greater secret of the two of them. It would also be exposed by the Chaos Demon God. Indeed, the incarnations of Xuanti and Xuanti did not respond to the Chaos Demon God's words. However, judging from their attitude, their emotions fluctuated slightly after hearing the Chaos Demon God's words. Although it was quickly covered up, those who dared to pay attention to this place were all experts among experts. How could they not notice it? Based on this point, the spectators could confirm that the Chaos Demon God's words were true. In the depths of the void, the incarnations of the four saints who had rushed back to the primordial world. They were preparing to return to their homes to guard their respective Taoist temples. However, who would have thought that the Chaos Demon God would reveal such a big piece of information? For a moment, they all stopped in their tracks and quietly looked at Mount Meru. The primordial world knew a lot about the origin of Taoist Xuanti. However, only Tao ancestor Hong Jun knew the origin of Saint Jiayin. Therefore, the words of the Chaos Demon God caused such a huge commotion. On Mount Meru, the incarnations of Xuanti looked at the Chaos Demon God quietly without saying anything. Mainly, they did not know what to say. Judging from the posture of the Chaos Demon God, it was obvious that he knew a lot about their origin. Perhaps he was related to their predecessors in some way. Alas, I said. What's wrong with you? The incarnations of Xuanti did not speak, but the Chaos Demon God did speak. As the descendants of the Chaos Demon God, why did you become the lackeys of the primordial world? His words shocked the world. No one had expected that the Chaos Demonic God would reveal such shocking news as soon as he opened his mouth. Xuanti was the descendant of the Chaos Demon God. This news was undoubtedly a bolt from the blue for all living beings in the primordial world. If this news was true, it was enough to subvert too many things. It would make everyone re-evaluate the existence of Xuanti and change the current situation of the primordial world. It could even shake the saint positions of Xuanti and Xuanti. Swish, swish, swish. Because they were too shocked, everyone did not care about hiding their existence and exposed themselves one after another. They looked at the Chaos Demon God with bright eyes, waiting for his explanation. Based on the empty words of the Chaos Demon God without any evidence, of course, it was impossible for everyone to directly confirm the identity of Xuanti. That was a heavenly path saint. The implications were completely beyond imagination. Unless the Chaos Demon God showed evidence. Haha. Facing everyone's bright eyes, the Chaos Demon God shook his head and did not take it to heart. After that, he stretched out his hands and formed a mysterious Taoist seal. In the void, two huge demon god seals slowly condensed. There was a huge lotus flower that was rooted in the Chaos Sea and a huge tree that was flowing with colorful light. Chaos Demon God. In the boundless starry sky, Feng Zichen could not help but narrow his eyes when he saw the two huge Chaos Demon God seals. He recognized the origin of the two seals, the mind of the Chaos Demon God, and the wisdom of the Chaos Demon God. The Mind Demon God. The Chaos Demon God who controlled the great path of mind. The Wisdom Demon God. The Chaos Demon God who controlled the great path of wisdom. The strength of these two Chaos Demon Gods belonged to the upper class even among the Chaos Demon Gods who were full of experts. They were second only to the top Chaos Demon Gods like time, destruction, and fate. It seems that what the Chaos Demon God said is very likely true. Xuanti and Xuanti must be related to the Chaos Demon God. Frowning slightly, Feng Zichen said absent-mindedly. He might not be able to recognize the lotus flower. However, the huge tree was very similar to the innate Bodhi tree, except that it was more mysterious. If Feng Zichen guessed correctly, it was the source of the innate Bodhi tree, the chaotic wisdom tree. Xuanti might not be cultivating the path of wisdom, but the innate Bodhi tree was called the wisdom tree in the untainted land. The relationship between the two was self-evident. The innate Bodhi tree should be transformed from the remains of the wisdom tree. In other words, Xuanti was indeed a descendant of the Chaos Demon God. As for Zhuan-Ti, he was even more amazing. He majored in the path of mind. In addition, the aura on the huge lotus flower was very similar to his. There was no doubt that even if he was not a descendant of the mind demon god, he must be related to it. Perhaps he was the reincarnation of the mind demon god, or a container like the experts of the devil sect. Feng Zichen could sense this, so the other great magicians of the untainted land could naturally sense it as well. They looked calm on the surface, but secretly, they surrounded the incarnation of Zhuan-Ti, who was receiving Zhuan-Ti. At the same time, after receiving the news from the three corpses, the true bodies of the saints far away in the sky screen did not change their expressions, but they secretly looked at Tao ancestor Hongjun. Note: the three corpses have the same mind as the true body. They can transmit information at any time. The origin of Zhuan-Ti could be hidden from them, but it could not be hidden from Tao ancestor Hongjun. But even so, the Tao ancestor still accepted them as disciples. Therefore, the three pure ones, Niwa, and the other three needed an explanation. Why did Tao ancestor Hongjun accept them as disciples when he knew their identities? Did he not know that those who are not of my race must have different intentions? Chapter 581. Don't underestimate the fact that Zhuan-Ti was a descendant of the chaos demon god. The impact it brought was too great. In the past, everyone could make a fuss and fight. But after all, they were all descendants of Pangu. They all had the mark of Pangu on their bodies. They were all Khanate godfiends of Panga's lineage. But who knew? The Zhuan-Ti were not, but the enemies of Panga's divine lineage, the descendants of the chaos demon god. That was infuriating. If the primordial world was compared to a big family, then the countless living beings born from Panga's legacy were considered members of this family, and the descendants of the chaos demon god were called outsiders. Now, the Zhuan-Ti, these two outsiders, not only were they doing well in the primordial world, but they had also become supreme saints. How could the members of Panga's divine lineage, who knew the truth, tolerate this situation? The primordial world was the descendant of Pangu, not the descendant of the chaos demon god. Allowing them to live in the primordial world was already out of consideration for the goodness of the heavens. But if they were allowed to live in a high position, the vast primordial world actually had to let two outsiders be in charge. Believe. As long as the members of Panga's divine lineage had a little courage, they would not tolerate such a thing happening. This was a matter of principle. If this situation became the norm, then wouldn't the sacrifices of the ancestors be in vain? The descendants of the chaos demon god and the descendants of Pangu had a long history of conflict. It could be traced back to the beginning of the world and the birth of life. At that time, the creatures born at the beginning of the world were divided into two camps, the Khanate godfiends of Panga's divine lineage and the Khanate fierce gods, beasts, of the chaos demon god's camp. They were natural enemies and were destined not to exist together. Therefore, there was the outbreak of the ancient fierce beast's calamity. This was the war between the descendants of Pangu and the descendants of the chaos demon god. In the end, the descendants of Pangu won the final victory after paying a huge price. After that, there was no trace of the descendants of the chaos demon god in the primordial world. But unexpectedly, there were two fish that escaped the net in front of them. Furthermore, he had become one of the rulers of the world. It wasn't easy for the ancestors to conquer the world. They weren't going to allow the descendants of the enemy to ride roughshod over their own disciples. This kind of thing. It was absolutely intolerable. He had to get an explanation. Therefore, the people of the primordial world surrounded Zhuan-Ti. This was not because they were harmful to the primordial world, but because of their identities. They were not fools. Of course, they did not think that Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti would give up their hard-earned sainthood, betray the untainted land, and join the camp of the chaos demonic god just because of a few words. They surrounded them because of their standpoint. As the descendants of Pangu, they could not tolerate the descendants of the chaos demon god. Just as Hao Yan and the others gradually surrounded the incarnation of Zhuan-Ti on Mount Meru, the atmosphere in the distant sky gradually became subtle. The three pure ones, Niwa, and the other three joined forces and looked at Tao ancestor Hongjun at the same time, vaguely wanting to force him to abdicate. If there was no explanation for this matter, they would never let it go. Of course, they were not targeting Tao ancestor Hongjun, but the heavenly Tao that was in charge of everything. Regarding the distribution of the sainthood, it was obvious that Tao ancestor Hongjun could not make the decision. The one who could truly make the decision was the heavenly Tao. If Tao ancestor Hongjun could make the decision, there would be no need for Xuanti and Xuanti. They would have long gone to wherever it was cool. Master, do you have anything to say about this? After a long silence, the leader of the group, the Grand Pure One, said in a deep voice. The four of them could be said to be the rulers of the Panga divine system, especially the three Pure Ones, who claimed to be the authentic Pangu. There was no reason for them to stay out of such a major matter that concerned the foundation of the primordial world. Even if they had to face the heavenly Tao, they had to brace themselves. In the primordial world, only Pangu was supreme. Although the heavenly Tao was big, it was not as big as Pangu. In the name of righteousness, even if they faced the heavenly Tao, the three Pure Ones, Nuwa, and the other three were not afraid at all. They even dared to question directly. Although the primordial world was created by the great Taoist priests of Pangu, it devoured too much of the origin of the Chaos Fiend Celestial during its birth. Therefore the world and the Chaos Fiend Celestial formed karma. In order to repay this karma, I will give the descendants of the Chaos Fiend Celestial 2 sainthood positions. At some point in time, the will of the heavenly Tao had already occupied Tao ancestor Hongjuan's body, and explained to the four of them indifferently. Hearing that, the four of them fell silent. Karma. It was karma again. There was really no way around it, and no way to escape it. The power of karma was unimaginably powerful. Even if a saint could not be tainted by karma, he could not escape the constraints of karma. In fact, not to mention a saint, even someone as powerful as Pangu lived in the constraints of karma, and could not transcend. As long as a living being had not reached the supreme realm of the great Tao, they could not be considered to have truly perfected and transcended. They had to live in the constraints of karma and reincarnation. What about the future? Are there any descendants of the Chaos Fiend Celestial who are occupying high positions? After a long silence, the Grand Pure One asked again. However, judging from his attitude, he had acknowledged the existence of Xuanti and Xuanti. There was nothing they could do about it. The heavenly Tao had already said that this was karma. What could they do? One had to know that karma, no matter how big or small it was, it had to be returned as soon as possible. Otherwise, as time passed, karma would continue to be involved, causing it to become bigger and bigger. If they wanted to repay it, the price would be huge. In order to stop the losses in time, the heavenly Tao directly gave the descendants of the Chaos Fiend Celestial 2 sainthood positions to understand the karma between the primordial world and the Chaos Fiend Celestial. Even if the Nuwa 3 Pure Ones were dissatisfied, she could not say anything. That was because that was the best solution. However, after this matter, Xuanti and Xuanti would not have a good time in the primordial world. At the very least, the other saints and the great mystical abilities of the primordial world would not have any good expressions when they saw the two of them in the future. In the past, although everyone had disputes, they only looked down on the Western sect and felt that it was too barren. They even despised the actions of the two saints. However, they would not go overboard. However, now as Xuanti's background was exposed, his position changed. He turned from a family member to an outsider. The previous harmony would not be maintained. Henceforth, the matter of the 6 of them working together would probably not happen again. In fact, the Nuwa 3 Pure Ones would even work together to secretly suppress Xuanti and obstruct the development of the Western sect. Since the primordial world has evolved until now, it has consumed too much of the essence of the Chaos Fiend Celestial. Therefore, with this merit, the descendants of the Chaos Fiend Celestial are also a part of the primordial world. Whether they can occupy high positions in the future depends on your methods. Tiandao Hongjun said indifferently. Judging from his words, he did not deny the possibility of the descendants of the Chaos Fiend Celestial becoming the mainstream of the world. Just as he had said, the Chaos Fiend Celestial had also contributed to the scale of the primordial world. They had contributed to the primordial world. Therefore, their descendants were also a part of the primordial world, and enjoyed the same rights as the Panga divine system. As for whether they could become the upper echelons of the primordial world, it would depend on the ability of the Panga divine system. Even if you suppress the descendants of the Chaos Fiend Celestial, the way of heaven would not interfere. On the contrary, under the suppression of the Panga divine system, the descendants of the Chaos Fiend Celestial would still rise. The way of heaven would also not interfere with their attainment. Whether the descendants of the Chaos Fiend Celestial could rise depended on the means of the Panga divine system. Anyway, as long as the two sides did not want to destroy the primordial world, the way of heaven did not care who was in charge of the primordial world. We understand. Retracting their gazes, the Nuwa three pure ones secretly made up their minds. After this matter was over, and they returned to the primordial world, they would carefully search the primordial world, and find the remaining descendants of the Chaos Fiend Celestial. They would see how much negative karma they had and decide whether to kill them, or send them into reincarnation. Fellow Taoists, please don't worry. Since Xuanti was born in the primordial world, he will naturally prioritize the primordial world, and will not wallow in the mire with the Chaos Fiend Celestial. At this moment, Xuanti said at the same time, they were also very helpless. Their birth was not something they could decide. It was true that they did not want to be the descendants of the Pangu, but the conditions really did not allow it. At this moment, Xuanti's heart was also extremely bitter. From now on, the two of them were completely isolated in the primordial world. The Panga divine system was self-contained, and had already excluded the two of them. The past is like the past. The Porway senior brother and junior brother do not know the Chaos Heart Cleansing Lotus, or the Chaos Wisdom Tree. They only know the primordial Chaos Heart Cleansing Lotus, and the primordial Bodhi Tree. Porway Guide. Porway Xuanti. Greetings, fellow Taoists. With a thought, Xuanti's will cross the vast chaos and descended on the incarnation. He said to the Chaos Fiend Celestial. He wanted to show that he had nothing to do with the Chaos Fiend Celestial, and completely draw a line with him. He wanted to avoid causing misunderstandings among the living beings of the primordial world, and causing unnecessary trouble. The descendants of the chaos will eventually return to the embrace of the chaos. This is fate and destiny. You can't escape. One day you will understand. In the end, you are different from them. Seeing that Xuanti refused to return to the embrace of the Chaos Fiend Celestial, the 6 Chaos Fiend Celestial were not angry. They just made a prophecy. They hinted at Xuanti that no matter how they rejected the Chaos Fiend Celestial, they would eventually join the camp of the Chaos Fiend Celestial. In this regard, Xuanti was non-committal. Who could say for sure what would happen in the future? Anyway, for now they had decided to draw a line with the Chaos Fiend Celestial. Fellow Taoists, this karma needs to be settled. In order to prove his determination to draw a line with the Chaos Fiend Celestial, Xuanti could not care less about the huge gap between them. He gritted his teeth and charged toward the Chaos Fiend Celestial. Boom! Boom! A terrifying battle broke out. 6 Chaos Fiend Celestial of the Chaos Primordial Chaos Realm against 4 incarnations of the Saints whose combat strength was comparable to the Chaos Primordial Chaos Realm. As a result, the incarnations of the Saints were naturally suppressed by the Chaos Fiend Celestial. After all, the incarnations were not the original body. The difference in strength was too great. Everyone, let's do it. Seeing that the 4 incarnations of Xuanti were about to be killed by the Chaos Fiend Celestial, the 3 pure ones who were hiding in the dark finally could not stand it anymore, and decided to help. No matter how dissatisfied Xuanti was, they could not sit and watch his incarnations be killed by the Chaos Fiend Celestial in the face of a great enemy. Wasn't this forcing him to surrender to the Chaos Fiend Celestial? Whoosh! The incarnations of the 3 pure ones and Nuwa's incarnations, a total of 8 Chaos Primordial Chaos Realm experts, appeared from the void and charged toward the Chaos Fiend Celestial. Note: the 3 pure ones, the 2 pure ones, the 2 pure ones, and the 1 Nuwa. The 12 Chaos Primordial Chaos Realm experts attacked together. Even the Chaos Fiend Celestial was no match for them. They quickly withdrew and fled into the void, disappearing. Thank you for your help, fellow Taoist. Suppressing his injuries, Zhuan Ti's incarnation thanked the three Pure Ones and Yua's incarnation. No need to be so polite. It's all for the primordial world. They waved their hands, indicating that they did not need to care. Then they remained silent. In the end, the four Pure Ones and Yua took a deep look at the two of them and left. At this point, both sides did not know what to say. It was better to let time prove everything. However, during the entire process, they did not notice the extremely hidden and strange light in the eyes of Saint Zhuan Ti. Just as the two of them were being suppressed by the Chaos Fiend Celestial, various inheritances of the Chaos Fiend Celestial were transmitted to the heart of Saint Zhuan Ti through their attacks. In other words, the Chaos Fiend Celestial took the opportunity to secretly pass on all kinds of inheritances about himself to Saint Zhuan Ti. This action was very secretive. Not to mention the spectators, even Saint Zhuan Ti did not notice it at all. Strange. Very strange. Why did the Chaos Fiend Celestial pass on his inheritance? Saint Zhuan Ti did not know, but he understood that the inheritance passed on by the Chaos Fiend Celestial could help him solve the dilemma he was facing. Recruit disciples and reorganize the orthodoxy. Because of this, Saint Zhuan Ti accepted the inheritance of the Chaos Fiend Celestial. He could not refuse this temptation. However, Saint Zhuan Ti also understood that it was not so easy to take the things of the Chaos Fiend Celestial. In the future, he would definitely have to pay a greater price for this. However, at this time the most important thing was how to reorganize the orthodoxy. As for other things, they were secondary. Originally, it was very difficult for the Western sect to recruit disciples in the primordial world. After this, it would become even more difficult. It could even be said that they could not recruit disciples. No one was willing to join the Western sect. If they could not even recruit disciples, how could they reorganize the orthodoxy and prosper the Western sect? However, at this moment, the Chaos Fiend Celestial provided them with a direction that could solve the problem of the Western sect not being able to recruit disciples. In this way, how could Saint Zhuan Ti refuse? Even if he knew that he was asking a tiger for its skin, he had to grit his teeth and agree, because the huge loan was like Mount Buzhou pressing on their bodies. It brought them great pressure, and did not allow them to breathe for a moment. Accepting the inheritance of the Chaos Fiend Celestial, Zhuan Ti had no choice but to accept it. If this move brought a certain amount of harm to the primordial world in the future, then blame the heavenly Tao. If it were not for the huge loan, how could Zhuan Ti and Saint Zhuan Ti live such a tiring life? Lowering the bottom line step by step. Chapter 582. With the departure of the Chaos Demon God, Mount Meru gradually regained its peace. However, the damage caused by this incident could not be healed in a short period of time. For example, in this tribulation of Mount Meru, a small half of the disciples of the Western sect could not resist the bewitchment of the inner demons and fell into the demonic path, never to return. Among the remaining disciples, a small portion was killed by the disciples of the Western sect who had fallen into the demonic path led by the inner demons. The rest were all killed by the anger of the Chaos Demon God. At this point, almost all the disciples of the Western sect were killed. Only a few disciples managed to escape the calamity, because they were not on Mount Meru due to their travels. Of course, the losses of the Western sect were not limited to that. First, the inner demons suddenly attacked and died Mount Meru, awakening the powerful demonic nature that had been buried for countless years in the depths of Mount Meru. As a result, Mount Meru, the primitive Holy Land, completely turned into a peerless demonic domain. Then, in order to take revenge for the destruction of the sect, the 4 incarnations of Zhuan Ti and the 6 Tao Master level Chaos Demon Gods began a shocking battle. However, the Chaos Demon Gods were too fierce. Zhuan Ti was no match for them and gradually fell into a disadvantage. In the end, it was the 3 Pure Ones Nuwa who joined the battle and joined forces with Zhuan Ti. Only then did they force the 6 Chaos Demon Gods back. However, it was also because of this that Mount Meru could be said to have suffered a calamity. Think about it. 6 primordial Chaos Demon Gods. In addition, The three pure ones Nuwa had 12 incarnations with primordial chaos combat strength of the 6 saints Zhuan-Ti. A total of 18 primordial chaos existences fought on Mount Meru. Even if Mount Meru was the #1 holy land of the Western sect and the location of the ancestral bloodline, it could not withstand such destruction. Even the Heaven Realm was on the verge of destruction under the bloody battle of several primordial chaos experts, let alone Mount Meru. Therefore, after this battle, Mount Meru was almost razed to the ground. All the spiritual veins were shattered. Even the Western ancestral bloodline, which had recovered some vitality with great difficulty, only had a trace of vitality left. Even the ancestral bloodline was so miserable. Not to mention the various treasures that Zhuan-Ti had set up on Mount Meru. For example, there were no traces of the 8 treasures merit pool. As for the merit golden lotus in the pool, it had long been swept away by the inner demons. Ever since Zhuan-Ti had occupied Mount Meru, countless years had passed. Countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures had been used to build Mount Meru into a top-notch grotto heaven in the primordial world. But he never thought that a sudden battle had destroyed Zhuan-Ti's life's work in an instant. Almost all of his disciples had perished, and his foundation had been destroyed by the flames of war. How could the word tragic be enough to describe it? At the ruins of Mount Meru, the devilish aura was treacherous, and the smell of blood lingered. Wisps of baleful aura rose into the air, and from time to time, the cries of ghosts and the howls of gods could be heard. If someone who was unaware of the situation were to come here, they would most likely think that this was a gathering place for devils. However, there were 2 figures, whose bodies emitted a holy and peaceful aura, quietly standing in this place that was filled with dense demonic chi and evil aura. They quietly looked to the front, as though they were reminiscing about something. They completely ignored the oppressive evil aura around them. These 2 people were the Zhuan-Ti of reception. What they remembered was naturally the Western sect that was once prosperous in the past, the legendary Supreme Orthodoxy that had the inheritance of 2 saints. Looking at the shattered mountains, the charred ground, and the dark red bloodstains in front of them, Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti were speechless for a long time. They felt bitter in their hearts. It was gone. It was all gone. All their efforts had been in vain. Everything they had paid previously now seemed so laughable. After a long silence, Saint Jie-in finally made a move. He gently waved his hand and cut open the boundless void. He brought Saint Zhuan-Ti to the upper-class world that he had created, the Elysium Great World. Junior brother, what do you think of this method? In the Elysium Great World, Saint Jie-in repeatedly confirmed that no one could spy on this place before he spoke to Saint Zhuan-Ti. Just now, he had passed on the inheritance that he had obtained from the Chaos Demon God to Saint Zhuan-Ti. Senior brother, this is. After receiving the inheritance of the Chaos Demon God from Saint Jie-in, Saint Zhuan-Ti was first shocked. Then he frowned and pondered carefully. After a while he pretended to be enlightened and praised. This method is wonderful. At this point Saint Zhuan-Ti could not hide the excitement in his heart. He could not help but say, if this method can be popularized, then not to mention rebuilding the Western sect, even if it prospers in the world, there will be more possibilities than before. But, at this point Saint Zhuan-Ti could not help but pause and say worriedly, however, if the 2 of us really follow this method, we will definitely offend the 3 pure ones, the Nuwa, the entire celestial sect of wonders, and even all the gods of the Panga divine system. Saint Zhuan-Ti had no choice but to hesitate. Although the method passed down by the Chaos Demon God was of great help to rebuilding the Western sect, it was too shocking. Once they did it, it was equivalent to breaking off ties with the Panga divine system. Do you know why? It turned out that the inheritance that the Chaos Demon God had passed down to Saint Jie-in was a method to enlighten connate ferocious beasts. In other words, after learning this inheritance, Saint Zhuan-Ti and Saint Jie-in could use this to enlighten the connate ferocious beasts, remove the murderous aura in their bodies, open their wisdom, and enlighten their true spirits. This allowed the connate ferocious beasts to gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to strengthen themselves like the creatures of the primordial world, and completely embark on the path of cultivation. This method was naturally very good for the current Zhuan-Ti of receiving yin-yang. However, For the Khanate gods and demons of the Panga divine system, it was intolerable. This was shaking their foundation. In a short period of time, perhaps they could not see anything. However, as time passed, it was inevitable that all kinds of accidents would occur, causing the Khanate ferocious beasts to surpass the Panga divine system and become the mainstream of the primordial world. Although the possibility of this was extremely small and seemed to be completely impossible. However, in the end, no matter how small the possibility was, it still existed. They had to be on guard. Anything that could shake the foundation of the Panga divine system should be killed in the cradle. This was called nipping the problem in the bud. How could the foundation left behind by the ancestors be allowed to be controlled by the bandits? Therefore, once Xuanti used this method, he would definitely offend the Panga divine system. However, at this moment, did Xuanti have a choice? They did not. At this moment, just the identity of the descendant of the Chaos Fiend God was enough to make most of the living beings of the primordial world refuse to join the Western sect. If they could not take in disciples, the Western sect would never prosper. Therefore, in order to rebuild the Western sect, Xuanti and Saint Xuanti would definitely use this method. They had no choice. If they could not take in the living beings of the primordial world as disciples, they would take in the Khanate ferocious beasts as disciples. As powerful living beings born from the flesh and blood of the Chaos Fiend God, the power of the Khanate ferocious beasts was obvious to all. Of course, there were gains and losses. It was because they were too powerful that they lacked the crucial intelligence. However, it was undeniable that, once the Khanate ferocious beasts gained intelligence and made up for their shortcomings, they would definitely soar into the sky and become a major force in the primordial world. Would the Western sect, which had obtained this help, be far from prospering in the world? The only pity was that almost all the Khanate ferocious beasts in the primordial world had died. New Khanate ferocious beasts still needed an extremely long period of time to be reborn. In a short period of time, Xuanti would probably not be able to carry out the plan to enlighten the Khanate ferocious beasts. As for whether this would offend the Panga divine system, Xuanti did not care anymore. Because, Junior brother, what do you think? Even if we don't carry out this plan, won't we offend the Panga divine system? After a moment of silence, Saint Xuanyin said leisurely. Hearing this, Saint Xuanti suddenly paused. That's right. Even if they did not enlighten the Khanate ferocious beasts, their relationship with the Panga divine system would not be the same as before. Estrangement. From the moment their identities were exposed, once it was formed, it would be difficult to heal. Even if they risked universal condemnation and enlightened the Khanate ferocious beasts, it would only make the already unharmonious relationship between them and the Panga divine system worse. This price, compared to the future of the Western sect, it was really nothing. Senior brother, you're right. After thinking through the key point, Saint Xuanti was no longer worried about gains and losses. He directly made a decision in his heart. He would do this matter just like that. Moreover, after making a decision, Saint Xuanti even found an extremely suitable reason for himself in his heart to eliminate the uneasiness caused by them joining forces with the Chaos Fiend God. Senior brother, the Heavenly Tao has said that the descendants of the Chaos Fiend God are also members of the primordial world. They have the possibility of becoming the ruler of the world. From this, it can be seen that enlightening the Khanate ferocious beasts is the will of the heavens. The two of us are just taking advantage of the situation. Otherwise, how could it be such a coincidence? The Heavenly Tao has just finished saying that the descendants of the Chaos Fiend God are also members of the primordial world. Then, Senior Brother obtained the method to enlighten the Khanate ferocious beasts from the Chaos Fiend God. Perhaps everything that we've experienced is part of the Heavenly Tao's plan. As he spoke, Saint Xuanti felt that what he said made sense. He even came up with a conspiracy theory. Senior Brother, do you think it's possible? The Heavenly Tao saw that the power of the Panga divine system was getting stronger and stronger. It was gradually losing control. That's why it borrowed the hands of the two of us to support the descendants of the Chaos Fiend God to fight against the increasingly powerful Panga divine system, and achieve the goal of balancing the situation of the primordial world. After saying that, Saint Xuanti looked at Saint Jieyin with bright eyes. looking forward to his answer. However, Saint Jie Yin's next action clearly disappointed him. Saint Jie Yin's expression changed, and he scolded softly. Junior brother, be careful with your words. What does the Heavenly Tao's plan have to do with you? How can you guess the Heavenly Tao's plan? At this moment, Saint Jie Yin was also very speechless. What was wrong with his junior brother? He was usually quite smart. Why didn't he understand the principle that trouble came from the mouth today? It was fine to think about such a thing in his heart. How could he say it out loud? If this matter was fake, it would be fine. If it was true and Taoist Zhuan-Ti revealed the Heavenly Tao's plan, wouldn't he be marked by the Heavenly Tao for no reason and cause trouble for himself? Saint Jie Yin was anxious. From this, it could be seen that in his heart, he vaguely agreed with Saint Zhuan-Ti's words. Otherwise, why would he be so anxious? He subconsciously thought that this matter was true and was worried that Saint Zhuan-Ti, who had revealed the Heavenly Tao's plan, would be targeted by the Heavenly Tao. Senior brother, you're right. I was a little carried away. After this matter, I will begin to practice silent meditation and not say a word for 1,000,000 years. Remember today's lesson. At that moment, Saint Zhuan-Ti also realized what a stupid thing he had done just now and hurriedly said, "That's good too. Practicing the vow of silence is also a good way to temper your jumpy personality. Moreover, in the future, it's best for you and I to communicate with each other in our hearts to avoid causing any unknown trouble." Saint Jie Yin nodded and said, "Senior brother, you're right," Saint Zhuan-Ti said in a low voice. Seeing Saint Zhuan-Ti like this, Saint Jie Yin shook his head and smiled. He did not say anything. For a moment, the two of them fell silent. In their hearts, they silently pondered the possibility of this matter being schemed by the Heavenly Tao. It did not matter if they did not think about it, but when they thought about it, they were shocked. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that this matter was inseparable from the Heavenly Tao. It was as if no one could escape his scheme. They thought silently for a while. The two of them were afraid of being sensed by the Heavenly Tao, so they did not dare to continue thinking. If this matter was really schemed by the Heavenly Tao, then he was too terrifying. Even the Chaos Demon God was in his scheme. Of course, this could be purely because they were thinking too much and scaring themselves. This matter had nothing to do with the Heavenly Tao. The smarter a person was, the easier it was for them to think too much, especially a schemer like Saint Zhuan-Ti. His heart was filled with schemes and tricks, so naturally, everything he saw looked like a scheme. In short, whether this matter was really related to the Heavenly Tao or not, it was not something they should worry about. What they wanted to do was nothing more than take advantage of the situation. Senior brother, do you think that after we enlighten the Khanate ferocious beasts and teach them the cultivation method, will we obtain the merit of enlightenment? Suddenly, Taoist Zhuan-Ti seemed to have thought of something and asked Saint Jie Yin. Merit of enlightenment? This might not be impossible. According to the Heavenly Tao, the Khanate ferocious beasts are also a member of the primordial world, and they are a huge force second only to the Khanate god fiends. And in the primordial world, anyone who enlightens all living beings can obtain merit. From this point of view, there should be merit to enlighten the Khanate ferocious beasts. After thinking carefully, Saint Jie Yin said, enlightening the Khanate ferocious beasts, and allowing them to comprehend the Heavenly Tao, thereby bringing them under the jurisdiction of the Heavenly Tao to increase the influence of the Heavenly Tao. This move was completely equivalent to expanding the territory of the Heavenly Tao. Was a huge contribution. Why was there no merit to be obtained? Merit. There must be. It might even be more than imagined. After all, the Khanate ferocious beasts were theoretical. A powerful force that was not inferior to the Khanate god fiends. Chapter 583. If Xiao Chun could teach this faction a lesson, he would obtain a lot of beneficence. Perhaps, the two of them could even become a Tao ancestor with the merit of educating Khanate ferocious beasts. One had to know that Tao ancestor Hong Jun relied on the merit of imparting the Tao to achieve the supreme position of Tao ancestor in the primordial world. If Zhuan-Ti imparted the Tao to the Khanate ferocious beasts, and taught them to become great beings. With the support of such a huge amount of merit, it might be possible to open another lineage and become a Tao ancestor. The great Tao is promising. Thinking of the possible achievements in the future, Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti trembled slightly. That was exciting. After all, that was a Tao ancestor. The most honorable position in the primordial world. Perhaps. One day in the future. Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti sat high on Mount Meru. There were many great beings who were born as connate ferocious beasts under them. They were faintly on par with the celestial sect of wonders. Of course, these were all the fantasies of Zhuan-Ti and Zhuan-Ti. The most powerful place of the celestial sect of wonders was not the three sects of Ren, Chan, and Jia, but the 3,000 mortal guests of the Purple Cloud Palace. It was precisely because of their presence that no force in the primordial world could shake the position of the celestial sect of wonders. If Zhuan-Ti wanted to surpass the celestial sect of wonders, it would be better to save it. That was more difficult than repaying their loans. Junior brother, I'm afraid it will be difficult for the two of us to establish ourselves in the celestial sect of wonders in the future. We still have to make plans early. After a moment of silence, Saint Jia said to Saint Zhuan-Ti, currently, in their capacity, it was indeed awkward to stay in the celestial sect of wonders. It was time to leave. How should I put it? Zhuan-Ti's situation in the celestial sect of wonders was completely ignored by his teachers and brothers. He was completely isolated. Therefore, it didn't matter whether he stayed or not. Especially, what they were going to do next would shake the foundation of the Panga divine system. As for the celestial sect of wonders, it was the largest force in the Panga divine system. From the moment they decided to enlighten the connate ferocious beasts, they were destined to be on the opposite side of the celestial sect of wonders. Therefore, Zhuan-Ti had no choice but to leave. Well, they couldn't even part it on good terms. That's right. It wasn't easy to get together, so how could it be easy to part? Senior brother is right. Those disciples of the celestial sect of wonders have long disliked the two of us. Now we might as well follow their wishes and completely withdraw from the celestial sect of wonders. In the future, in order to be restrained by the celestial sect of wonders, we can wholeheartedly develop our own forces. Saint Zhuan-Ti, who had long been dissatisfied with the Xian sect, hurriedly said after hearing Saint Jia words. Saint Zhuan-Ti could not forget the extremely unwilling look in Tao ancestor Hongjun's eyes when he accepted the two of them as disciples. Junior brother, don't worry. At this time, the primordial world is in trouble. It's not the time for us to leave the celestial sect of wonders. When the conflict in the primordial world stops, we will have accumulated a portion of our strength. That will be the best time to leave the celestial sect of wonders. Saint Jia shook his head and said unhurriedly. Now that their identities had just been exposed, they couldn't wait to announce their departure from the celestial sect of wonders. Wasn't this clearly telling others that there was something wrong with them? One must know that. Their true bodies were still by the side of the three pure ones, Niwa, and the other three. If they really did that, then the four of them would probably join forces to seal the two of them, or directly beat them out of the primordial world, leaving the two of them to fend for themselves. Therefore, the matter of leaving the celestial sect of wonders could not be rushed. It needed to be planned slowly. After all, leaving the celestial sect of wonders was not a small matter. It would affect the future situation of the primordial world. Moreover, betraying the sect and establishing another sect was not a glorious thing. In the end, Saint Jia was also extremely dissatisfied with Tao ancestor Hongjun. It was because Tao ancestor Hongjun was too biased. The direct disciples each had a primordial treasure, while the registered disciples only received a supreme-grade primordial spirit treasure. Saint Jia expressed that he could not tolerate such unfair treatment. It was precisely the celestial sect of wonders' injustice to them that caused the two of them to have the idea of establishing another sect after they gained strength. Of course, these were all excuses. The two of them did not even think about it. If it were not for Tao ancestor Hongjun's teachings, how could they have their current cultivation? Moreover, Tao ancestor Hongjun did not owe them anything. Even if he owed them something, The grace of teaching them the Tao was enough to repay everything. Therefore, Tao ancestor Hongjun had no obligation to give the two of them primordial spirit treasures. However, the Tao ancestor still gave it. And it was the most top-grade primordial spirit treasure. This action could be said to be extremely benevolent. However, not only did the two of them not know how to be grateful, but they were also resentful that the Tao ancestor did not give them primordial spirit treasures. They even had the idea of establishing their own sect. It had to be said. Such was his nature. What could others do about it? With a plan in mind, the two saints Xuanti and Jieyin began to get busy. First, they summoned their remaining disciples. Then, they used their supreme divine abilities to move mountains and create seas. They moved the earth veins and gathered the chi of heaven and earth from all directions. They reshaped Mount Meru in preparation for rebuilding the Western sect in the future. Of course, the Western sect in the future could no longer be called the Western sect. Instead, it should be called a sect, like the Celestial Sect of Wonders and the Devil Sect of Wonders. As for what kind of sect, the two of them had not thought about it yet. However, it did not matter. There was still some time before the two of them left the Celestial Sect of Wonders. It was enough for them to think about it slowly. In the distance, the three pure ones watched quietly as the two of them busied themselves. Little did they know, in their hearts, they already had the intention to rebel. They planned to set up their own sect. The primordial world gradually returned to peace. However, the vast and boundless starry sky gradually became lively. Rumble. Zhousing operated violently. A vast and unfathomable connate formation gradually spread out and appeared in front of everyone in the primordial world. Swish, 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 swish. The galaxy was vast and the light of the universe was shining. Terrifying starlight burst out like a huge canopy, covering the entire starry sky. At this moment, under the cover of the galaxy cosmic light array and the god Pengu, no one could see through what was happening in the boundless starry sky. Yes, no one noticed. Then there was no need to act. The chaos of the connate ferocious beasts could be ended. Withdraw. Feng Zichen waved his sleeve, and the terrifying connate ferocious beasts that were wreaking havoc in the starry sky disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only a few groups of connate ferocious beasts with the cultivation of celestial immortals and mystic immortals were left on the spot, jumping around. Feng Zichen was not a chaos demon god, nor was he primordial Daoyuo Jingxian. The connate ferocious beasts that he created, of course, could not have the cultivation of Daoyuo Jingxian, or even the sage-to-be realm, celestial immortals and mystic immortals. These who had just entered the immortal path. This was a normal phenomenon. Of course, if Feng Zichen gathered the chaos origin chi, he could indeed create a few connate ferocious beasts at the sage-to-be realm. However, what Feng Zichen created was not a few connate ferocious beasts, but tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of them. Or even more. With such a large number of connate ferocious beasts, it was understandable that their strength was low. However, they were extremely malleable, and there was a possibility that they could become Daoyuo Jingxian in the future. As for those powerful connate ferocious beasts that wreaked havoc in the starry sky, of course, they were all fake. They were all reasonable methods that Feng Zichen used to summon the Thunderlock incarnation and the Gauchen incarnation. Rumble. The galactic cosmic light array continued to operate for more than 1,000 years before it stopped, allowing Zhousing to reappear in front of the primordial world. Those connate ferocious beasts also disappeared without a trace. They were all refined to death by the galactic cosmic light array, or they were killed by the three gods together. Anyway, with the reappearance of Zhousing, the chaos of the connate ferocious beasts that broke out in the boundless starry sky was completely quelled. It did not cause too much of a stir in the primordial world. At this point, the primordial world fell into peace again, and the demon sect went into hiding again. The heaven realm and the boundless starry sky were extremely peaceful under the governance of Haotian, Feng Zichen, and the other three. On the ground, under the governance of Fuxi, the various races lived in peace and harmony. In the netherworld, there was the chaos treasure, the 6 paths of reincarnation disc, and the number one saint of the earth, the Hutu, personally overseeing it. The incarnations of the saints that returned from the sky screen also guarded their respective mountain gates, and did not do anything special. From this point of view, perhaps one would think that the primordial world had really calmed down, and that there were no more disputes. However, Feng Zichen, Haoyan, and the others did not relax because of this. Instead, they became more and more nervous, because, until now, the demon ancestor Rahu still had not appeared. As long as the demon ancestor did not make a move, Feng Zichen and the others would not be able to rest in peace. The tranquility of the primordial world was perhaps the calm before the storm. Therefore, everyone was thinking of ways to increase their strength to guard against the attack of the demon ancestor Rahu. In fact, Feng Zichen had secretly prepared a blood altar for himself in advance, in case he was unfortunately killed by the demon ancestor Rahu's attack, and could be resurrected in time. It did not matter how strong the demon ancestor Rahu was. They could totally fight against Tao ancestor Hongjun. No matter how strong Tao ancestor Hongjun was, the demon ancestor Rahu, who was his lifelong enemy, was almost on the same level. Even if it was slightly inferior, it was not far away. Therefore, when facing an expert like the demon ancestor Rahu, it was not too much to be careful. Time often passed by inadvertently. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of years had passed. During this period, Feng Zichen and the others did not wait for the revenge of the demon ancestor Rahu. Instead, they waited for another extremely troublesome matter. That was the innate baleful aura that filled the primordial world had completely erupted. It had been said earlier that after the innate ferocious beast died, its origin would not dissipate. It would turn into innate baleful aura, and continue to corrode the surrounding earth veins. In addition, the origin of the chaotic baleful aura hidden in the endless spirit veins of the primordial world was continuously corroding the spirit veins of the primordial world. The combination of these two caused the content of the innate baleful aura in the primordial world to gradually increase, to the point where it was today. It was enough to affect the normal operation of the primordial world. At this moment, if one looked down from the heaven realm, they would see that the entire primordial world was filled with dense innate baleful aura. They were like boiling hot water, boiling violently and corroding everything around them. Some of the innate baleful aura even rose from the ground to the sky, and began to destroy the environment of the heaven realm. The situation was extremely dangerous. The innate baleful aura had reached the point where it had to be controlled. If it continued to be left alone, it would not be long before the entire primordial world became the paradise of the demonic path, where there would be no space for immortal path cultivators to live. However, the origin of the chaotic baleful aura was hidden too deeply. Even if Feng Zichen and the others used all their means, they could not find it. This led to the current situation. What an eventful period! Looking at the primordial world from the Ziwei star, Feng Zichen could not help but reveal a look of pity in his eyes. He saw many primordial world creatures gradually lost their nature under the corrosion of the innate baleful aura, and turned into monsters that only knew how to kill. And this was only the beginning. As more and more creatures were eroded by the innate baleful aura, and turned into monsters that only knew how to kill, that would definitely cause a huge conflict in the primordial world. With a conflict, there would definitely be a fight. This would also give the innate baleful aura a chance to take advantage of, and cause more creatures to be eroded by it. At that time, the situation would only become more and more intense until it completely went out of control. We can't continue like this. Otherwise, the primordial world will be in danger. Looking at the primordial world filled with baleful aura, Feng Zichen's heart sank for a moment before he made a decision. He was going to take action to solve the innate baleful aura. As for how to solve the innate baleful aura, Feng Zichen had long had a plan in his heart. He had thought of a total of 2 ways. One was to treat the symptoms, and the other was to treat the root cause. The first way was to reorganize the primordial spirit meridians, to force the origin of the chaotic baleful aura out of the endless spirit meridians of the primordial world, and cut off the source of the birth of the innate baleful aura. Once the source was solved, the danger of the primordial world would immediately disappear. The remaining innate baleful aura was not a threat at all. After a few cycles of the heavenly Tao, it was naturally expelled to the ultimate. This was the way to treat the root cause. However, there were still great enemies spying on the primordial world. It was really not the time to reorganize the earth meridians. Therefore, this matter could not be carried out. He could only wait for the heavenly Tao to return before making a decision. The other method was to treat the symptoms. It was also the method that Feng Zichen wanted to use now. That was to use all his strength to activate the boundless starry sky, and make the god Pengu breathe and exhale towards the primordial world. He would gather all the innate baleful aura that filled the primordial world into the boundless starry sky, and then slowly refine it. Although this method could suck the innate baleful aura into the boundless starry sky, it could not find the origin of the chaotic baleful aura. If the origin of the chaotic baleful aura was not removed, it would not be long before the innate baleful aura reappeared. Therefore, this method could only treat the symptoms, not the root cause. However, in this crisis, it was not important whether it was treating the symptoms or the root cause. The important thing was which one could be used. Since the root cause could not be used, he would first use the root cause to treat the symptoms. If he could delay it for a period of time, he would delay it for a period of time. It was better than doing nothing at all. Galaxy Cosmic Light Array Rise. Standing on the Emperor Star, Feng Zichen activated the Galaxy Cosmic Light Array. Chapter 584. However, the Galactic Cosmic Light Array this time was different from the past. He was stronger. It was because the person presiding over the array was no longer Feng Zichen alone but three: Great Emperor Ziwei, Great Emperor North Star, and Great Emperor of the South Pole. With the combined power of the three supreme beings of heaven and earth sitting at the center of the array, and operating the Zhousing with all their might, the power of the array would definitely be raised to its peak. In an instant, endless starlight gathered. A huge vortex formed above the starry sky. It occupied more than half of the starry sky. Rumble. An unimaginable suction force was emitted from the starlight vortex, setting off a huge storm on the primordial land. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the wind raged on the primordial land. It set off huge waves. However, the strange thing was that although the storm was strong, it did not hurt any living beings in the primordial land, nor did it cause any damage to the land. It was as if they had eyes, avoiding all living beings and specifically targeting the innate baleful aura that filled the primordial land. The wind swept everything, sweeping up the boundless innate baleful aura that filled the land and whistling towards the boundless starry sky. Refine. On the Emperor Star, Feng Zichen saw the wind sweeping up the innate baleful aura and whistling towards him. He did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly formed a Tao seal to activate the god Pengu. Whoosh. Silently, the god Pengu appeared. He sat cross-legged in the boundless starry sky, and began to circulate the ancient and mysterious three enclosures Tao scripture. With the circulation of the three enclosures Tao scripture, the innate baleful aura was attracted and surged into the body of the god Pengu like swallows returning to the forest. Buzz buzz buzz. Endless starlight gathered, wrapped in the innate baleful aura, and circulated back and forth between the Zhousing. As the innate baleful aura flowed, the star orbits lit up one after another, blooming with rays of Tao light in the starry sky. They were like the meridians of the human body, very mysterious. This was the god Pengu moving the great cycle. Just like the cultivation of cultivators, when it involved 108 stars, apertures, it was a small cycle. When it involved 365 stars, apertures, it was a large cycle. After a full cycle of transportation, quite a lot of innate malevolent energies were absorbed by Pengu, turning into nourishment for the recovery of the Zhousing, and the growth of the newly formed Yuanshan divine evil qi. As the great heavenly cycle continued, more and more innate baleful qi was refined on the untainted land. The boundless natural evil qi was disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was swept up by the huge storm, and rushed into the huge vortex in the center of the boundless starry sky. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, several thousand years had passed. Under the full absorption of the cosmic light array, the connate evil chi that had almost swept across the entire untainted land finally disappeared completely. Phew! On the North Star, Feng Zichen let out a long sigh of relief, relaxed his mind, and slowly stopped operating the galaxy cosmic light array. At this point, the crisis of the primordial world. This could be considered a temporary relief. However, in the end, this was only a temporary solution. If the source could not be resolved as soon as possible, the crisis that the primordial world would face in the future would become more and more serious. If the connate evil chi were to cause trouble a few more times, it would cause irreversible damage to the primordial world. At that time, no matter how strong the galaxy cosmic light array was, it would probably be useless. Feng Zichen had just put away the galaxy cosmic light array when wisps of connate evil chi emerged from the primordial world. A portion of the primordial world's spirit meridians had long been completely corroded by the connate evil chi. The energy they were releasing now was no longer heaven and earth spirit chi, but wisps of connate evil chi. This was a major matter that shook the foundation of the immortal Tao. It was also the biggest crisis of the primordial world at the moment. It was also the problem that the galaxy cosmic light array could not solve. If he did not find the source of the chaos evil chi, the situation would not improve. Sooner or later, the primordial world would become the paradise of the fiends. No. Waiting passively like this is not a solution. Looks like it's time to take the initiative to attack. Worried about the future of the primordial world, Feng Zichen decided to take the initiative to attack and turn passivity into initiative. It was not a good idea to keep waiting for the fiend ancestor Rahu to attack. Not to mention that it would take a lot of effort. Most of his energy was involved, so he had no time to deal with other things. This would not do. Since the fiend ancestor Rahu did not take the initiative to attack, he had to think of a way to force him to attack. He had to solve this problem as soon as possible, so that he could free up his hands to comb through the primordial world's earth meridians and search for the source of the chaos evil chi. He had to completely solve the hidden dangers of the primordial world. With this thought in mind, Feng Zichen was about to leave the Emperor Star and head to the Daoyuo sky to look for Hao Tian to discuss a plan to force the fiend ancestor Rahu to attack. But who would have thought that, before Feng Zichen could make a move, four earth-shattering baleful auras suddenly erupted in the primordial world? What? The baleful aura was so strong that it shot into the clouds, causing the earth to shake and the stars to sway. Its power was actually close to the primordial chaos realm. Even Feng Zichen could not help but be moved when he saw it. Putting aside the external forces, this power had already surpassed him. Shocked, Feng Zichen hurriedly looked at the source of the baleful aura. But the four ferocious beasts had been resurrected again. Every time they were reborn, it meant that the four ferocious beasts had become stronger. When the four ferocious beasts were just born, they were only at the middle stage of the sage-to-be realm. Before they could cause any trouble in the primordial world, they were killed by the powerful beings who rushed over. This was the first time the four ferocious beasts had died. Not long after that, the environment of the primordial world became worse and worse. The four ferocious beasts were reborn because of the tribulation chi and obtained even more powerful strength, which was equivalent to the perfected sage-to-be realm. But unfortunately, their luck was not on their side. They had just been resurrected, and before they could announce their existence to the primordial world, they bumped into the furious Hao Tian. TSK. In front of Hao Tian, whose strength was comparable to a fifth-level primordial chaos expert, the four ferocious beasts could not resist at all and were killed by him. And this was the second time the four ferocious beasts had died. After that, Feng Zichen and the others first calmed the chaos of the connate realm ferocious beasts. Then they suppressed the demon sect and restored peace to the primordial world. The four ferocious beasts were born because of the turmoil. The more chaotic the primordial world was, the more powerful they were. They could be immortal. But when the primordial world returned to peace, the four ferocious beasts lost the soil for their resurrection. They would slowly fall silent, waiting for the next outbreak of turmoil in the primordial world to carry out the plan to destroy the world. Because of this, Feng Zichen gradually relaxed his vigilance against the four ferocious beasts. But he did not expect that with the outbreak of the Kane evil spirit, the 4 ferocious beasts could be reborn with the power of the Kane evil spirit. There was no doubt that the 4 ferocious beasts were more powerful. Last time, they were only at the perfected sage-to-be realm. But this time, if Feng Zichen was not wrong, their strength had already stepped into the realm of primordial chaos. Yes, although the strength of the 4 ferocious beasts was close to that of Daoyuo Jingxian, they had not stepped into that realm after all. So there was a little gap between them. But with the appearance of the 4 ferocious beasts, the negative emotions accumulated in the primordial world for hundreds of thousands of years rushed into their bodies as if they had found their relatives. With the help of this, the 4 ferocious beasts took a crucial step and had the strength comparable to that of Daoyuo Jingxian. My name is Chaos. My name is Tao Wu. My name is Qiongqi. My name is Tao Wu. With 4 roars that shook the primordial world, the 4 ferocious beasts announced their existence to the primordial world in a high-profile manner. Troublesome. Looking down at the 4 ferocious beasts who were showing off in the primordial world, Feng Zichen frowned slightly. These 4 ferocious beasts could not be killed. He could only seal them. Now that they were already in the realm of primordial chaos, if he killed them, he did not know what realm they would be in the next time they were reborn. Therefore, he tried not to kill the 4 ferocious beasts if he could. Evil beast, you're courting death. In the Lingxiao Palace of the Heaven Realm, Hao Tian, who was dealing with official business, sensed the aura of the 4 ferocious beasts. Without thinking, he activated the power of the Heaven Realm and blasted a palm strike towards the lower realm. The power of this palm strike was equivalent to the full blow of a 5th-level primordial chaos expert. If an ordinary cultivator who had just entered the realm of primordial chaos was hit by this palm strike, he would be seriously injured even if he did not die. However, the 4 ferocious beasts were different after all. Rumble. Hao Tian's palm strike landed on Hun Dun's body. Following a loud bang, Hun Dun's enormous figure exploded and turned into a rain of blood that fell from the sky. However, in less than a moment, the void distorted. Then, as if time and space were flowing backward, Chaos' broken body suddenly turned into black gas and gathered on the spot, forming Chaos' huge body again. Moreover, the aura on his body was stronger than before. Hao Tian's palm strike had completely disappeared without a trace. Not a trace of power leaked out as it was all absorbed by Chaos. In other words, Hao Tian's palm strike did not kill Chaos. Instead, it became nourishment for his growth and made him stronger. How could this be? In the Lingxiao Palace of the Heaven Realm, Hao Tian was puzzled when he saw this strange scene. He had an impression of these 4 innate ferocious beasts. After all, there were not many innate ferocious beasts in the great perfection of sage-to-be in the untainted land. He still vaguely remembered that these 4 ferocious beasts had died in his hands. But what was going on? Not only did these 4 innate ferocious beasts come back to life, but they also became stronger. This was completely against common sense. Hao Tian was puzzled. He silently performed pre-celestial divination to deduce the origin of these 4 innate ferocious beasts. At this moment, as the untainted land returned to peace, Heaven's secret gradually became clear again. Although it was far from comparable to normal times, he could still deduce some unimportant things. The embodiment of negative emotions? After a while, after figuring out the origin of the 4 ferocious beasts, Hao Tian's face was full of bad luck. No wonder it did not make sense. It turned out that they were not life at all. In a sense, the 4 ferocious beasts were indeed not life. They were the manifestation of the negative emotions of the untainted land. They were composed of segments of emotions, like the embodiment of rules. Therefore, some well-known common sense could not be applied to them at all. For example, their unimaginable cultivation speed. Their strength was not cultivated by themselves, but gathered the negative energy of the entire untainted land. Even if behind the 4 ferocious beasts stood the masses of the untainted land, it would be strange if their strength was not strong. Tsk. This thing is not easy to deal with. After hesitating for a while, Hao Tian was about to go down to the untainted land to deal with the 4 ferocious beasts. As the celestial emperor, at this time, he could not stay out of it. He had to step forward bravely. However, not long after Hao Tian left the heavenly court, he saw Feng Zichen rushing over. "Brother Hao Tian, please wait." From afar, Feng Zichen saw Hao Tian's figure and hurriedly shouted, "Brother Ziwei, this is?" Hao Tian stopped and asked in confusion. "Brother, you can't attack in the untainted land." Coming to Hao Tian's side, Feng Zichen said. He wanted to stop Hao Tian from attacking the 4 ferocious beasts in the untainted land, because whether it was Hao Tian or the 4 ferocious beasts, they were all too strong. Sometimes in the untainted land, being too strong was not a good thing. When they attacked, it was inevitable that they would be restrained to avoid destroying the untainted land. If Feng Zichen did not stop Hao Tian today, and allowed him to fight with the 4 ferocious beasts in the untainted land, it would not be long before the entire untainted land fell apart, and completely fell into the ultimate. Can't attack? Then what should we do? We can't just let the 4 ferocious beasts destroy the untainted land, right? Hao Tian said with a frown. It was not that he did not know the consequences of fighting with the 4 ferocious beasts. However, he could not just ignore the 4 ferocious beasts just because he had misgivings, right? If that was the case, the damage to the untainted land would not be light. Therefore, it was better to attack at all costs, and try to take down the 4 ferocious beasts in the shortest time possible, in order to minimize the losses suffered by the untainted land. In this way, although it would cause some damage to the untainted land, it was better than letting the 4 ferocious beasts destroy it. However, this method also had a fatal flaw, and that was that the 4 ferocious beasts had to be taken down in a short period of time. Otherwise, once the battle fell into a stalemate, the damage to the untainted land would be unimaginable. However, Hao Tian was not worried about this at all. If he was alone, he might not be able to take down the 4 ferocious beasts in the shortest time possible. However, he was not the only one in the untainted land. There was also Great Emperor Ziwei, Great Emperor of the South Pole, Great Emperor Gaochen, and the 12 Saint Incarnations. If they attacked together, it would be easy to take down the 4 ferocious beasts. It's not that simple. It's impossible for us to attack at the same time. Otherwise, who will guard against demon ancestor Rahu? Now that the 4 ferocious beasts have appeared, it's the best time for demon ancestor Rahu to attack. I don't think he can hold back. Shaking his head, Feng Zichen analyzed to Hao Tian. The appearance of the 4 ferocious beasts could be said to be the last counterattack of the untainted land. After this, there would not be any major calamities in the untainted land. Once this opportunity was missed, it would be difficult for demon ancestor Rahu to find a suitable time to attack. Chapter 585. Therefore, demon ancestor Rahu would never let go of this opportunity. In order to guard against demon ancestor Rahu's sudden attack, Feng Zichen and the other experts of the primordial world had to be careful and vigilant of all movements in the primordial world. In this way, they could not spare too many experts to deal with the 4 ferocious beasts with Hao Tian. Sigh. That's true. I have to say that demon ancestor Rahu hiding in the dark is really a brilliant move. One person has taken up most of our energy. It makes us restrained everywhere, and not dare to use our full strength. Hao Tian could not help but sigh heavily. His words showed that he was very afraid of demon ancestor Rahu. The enemy is in the dark and we are in the light. This is how it is. Feng Zichen agreed. If demon ancestor Rahu was in the light, they would not be so afraid. However, demon ancestor Rahu hid in the dark and did not come out. This made them uncomfortable. With demon ancestor Rahu's strength, he might not be able to deal with their joint forces, but he was absolutely confident that he could kill 1 or 2 of them. Imagine, an expert who could take their lives was hiding in the dark and watching them at all times. Who wouldn't be afraid? Although demon ancestor Rahu could only attack once. But this time, it was enough for him to kill any expert in the primordial world other than the Tao ancestor. After this attack, demon ancestor Rahu would be besieged by all the experts in the primordial world, and would have no choice but to flee to the chaos. However, the person who was ambushed by demon ancestor Rahu would really die. Although there were many experts in the primordial world, no one wanted to be the person who was ambushed by demon ancestor Rahu. Everyone had cultivated bitterly for hundreds of millions of years, and survived countless calamities to reach their current cultivation level. They did not want to die just like that, and cause their lifetime of cultivation to turn into flowing water. Therefore, everyone was patient and obediently stayed in the training hall. They were vigilant at all times, and did not give demon ancestor Rahu a chance to ambush them. In fact, this time, the 4 ferocious beasts were wreaking havoc in the primordial world. Why didn't anyone attack? That was the reason. Once they appeared to fight the 4 ferocious beasts, they would definitely give demon ancestor Rahu a chance to ambush them. Therefore, no one dared to move. They were all watching. As for why Haotian would attack, it was because he had no choice. As the Heavenly Emperor, protecting the peace of the primordial world was his duty. He had no choice but to take action. Otherwise, the more serious the damage caused to the untainted land by the 4 great ferocious beasts, the worse Haotian's fate would be when the way of heaven settled the score. Of course, from another perspective, Haotian's intervention was also expected. Everyone treated vast heaven as bait to fish out the big fish that was fiend ancestor Rahu. Once fiend ancestor Rahu launched a sneak attack on vast heaven, everyone would swarm him and heavily injure, or even kill him. Why use Haotian as bait? It was also related to his identity. Firstly, he was the Heavenly Emperor, the supreme ruler of the primordial world in name. His identity was precious enough. Secondly, Great Heaven had a great enmity with the demon sect. Currently, most of the forces of the demon sect on the surface were destroyed by Haotian. Just these 2 points alone were enough for fiend ancestor Rahu to take action, even if he knew it was a trap. As for Haotian's safety, no one cared. The position of Celestial Emperor was too important. For this reason, there were many people in the world who wanted Haotian to fall. However, Haotian was completely unaware of these schemes. It was not that he was not smart enough, but that he was deceived. With the support of the power of heaven and earth, although Haotian had the power of the 5th level of primordial chaos, his mental state cultivation was still maintained at the original level, which was the realm of sage-to-be perfection. In this case, with the saint's realm of primordial chaos, if he secretly schemed against Haotian, he would not be able to react in a short time. And this short period of time was enough to take his life. If not for this, he would not have foolishly come down to the mortal world and deal with the 4 great ferocious beasts personally. Fortunately, Feng Zichen had Hongmeng Daozhong, the supreme treasure in this scheme. Otherwise, with his half-step primordial chaos realm, he would be foolishly sent to his death within the range of the saint's deceit. When experts exchanged blows, they would be limited by the conditions. Strength was secondary. Imperceptible calculations were the most fatal. This time the saint gave Feng Zichen a good lesson. In silence he schemed against Haotian, the Celestial Emperor. If it were not for Hongmeng Daozhong, Feng Zichen would have almost fallen into their trap. Since Brother Emperor has come here to stop me, you must have a way. Just as Feng Zichen was distracted, Haotian spoke with a smile. That's right. Feng Zichen nodded and said. He stopped Haotian not to remind him out of kindness. In this untainted land, there were many people who hoped that Haotian would fall. Coincidentally, Feng Zichen was one of them. He made a move at this time just to make use of Haotian before he died. The 4 great ferocious beasts are the embodiment of rules. There is no power in the untainted land that can completely kill them. And every time they fall, it is for the next stronger rebirth. So, I plan to suppress the 4 great ferocious beasts in the boundless starry sky so that they can never escape. Without hiding anything, Feng Zichen frankly told his plan. Suppressing the 4 great ferocious beasts in the boundless starry sky was his purpose. The 4 great ferocious beasts could not be killed, only suppressed. In this case, it was better to suppress them in the boundless starry sky. On the one hand, it could get rid of the untainted land forever. On the other hand, it could strengthen the origin of Zhousing. Pangu could even refine the chaos demon god, let alone the 4 great ferocious beasts. According to Feng Zichen's plan, he would suppress the 4 great ferocious beasts in the boundless starry sky, and then refine them with the god Pangu to strengthen the origin of Zhousing. And this refining was not to kill them, but to leave them with a breath. As long as the 4 great ferocious beasts did not die, The negative energy that existed in the untainted land would continue to gather towards them to increase their strength. In this way, the god Pengu could refine the 4 great ferocious beasts and provide power for Zhoshing. This was equivalent to the boundless starry sky having 4 more energy suppliers that would never run out. The 4 great ferocious beasts that were comparable to the primordial chaos Daluo Jingxian continuously provided power for the boundless starry sky. In addition to the chaotic energy that the god Pengu absorbed, it would not take long for the boundless starry sky to return to its peak state. And at that time, Feng Zichen would be able to jump out of the cage of the heavenly way and obtain true freedom. Suppress in the boundless starry sky? This method is feasible. However, in order to suppress the 4 great ferocious beasts, it will definitely involve most of the power of the boundless starry sky. In the future, if you want to use the power of the boundless starry sky, I'm afraid it will not be as easy as before. After thinking about it, Haotian said in confusion. In his opinion, this method was very feasible. But to Feng Zichen it was harmful and not beneficial. Not only would it waste energy, but it was also equivalent to binding his hands and feet and greatly reducing his strength. It was not worth it. It's okay. It's all for the sake of the world. It's nothing if I lose some strength. After hearing Haotian's words, Feng Zichen immediately put on a righteous look and spoke passionately. Haha, you are indeed benevolent and righteous. I thank you for your kindness on behalf of all the people in the world. Haotian first laughed and then solemnly bowed to Feng Zichen and tried to make an expression of gratitude. Of course, he would not believe a single word that Feng Zichen said. However, he could not figure out the key point. He kept feeling that something was wrong. In his impression, Feng Zichen was not the kind of person who would sacrifice his own interests for the sake of all the people in the world. However, although he could not figure it out, it did not prevent Haotian from agreeing and confirming the plan, not giving Feng Zichen a chance to regret. Brother, you are too serious. Seeing that Haotian was going to thank him on behalf of all the people in the world, Feng Zichen's eyes twitched. Unlike these people, Haotian was the celestial emperor. He was really qualified to represent all the people in the untainted land. If he said he would represent all the people in the world, he would really represent all the people in the world. He was not like the others, who were just a means to occupy a righteous position. This had a practical effect. Just after Haotian thanked him, Feng Zichen immediately felt a strong psyche power surging from the void and strengthening his body. With the psyche power, if Feng Zichen fulfilled his promise, he would get a lot of benefits. However, if he went back on his word, the psyche power would turn into negative karma and hinder his cultivation. Haotian's move was to completely block Feng Zichen's thoughts of going back on his word. Fortunately, Feng Zichen did not have any thoughts of going back on his word. Otherwise, he would have suffered a small loss this time. Brother, since this method is feasible, let's not delay it. Let's do it quickly. After all, the longer we delay, the greater the loss of the untainted land. Not caring about Haotian's thoughts, Feng Zichen repeatedly urged him to do it quickly. Brother, don't worry. I'll go now. With a smile, Haotian broke through the void and rushed to where the 4 ferocious beasts were. As for Feng Zichen, his figure flashed and returned to the Emperor Star. According to his and Haotian's plan, Haotian was responsible for attracting the attention of the 4 ferocious beasts, and he would join forces with Gaochen Luais to activate the galaxy cosmic light formation with all his strength to forcibly capture the 4 ferocious beasts to the boundless starry sky to suppress them. This plan had to be fast, because it was very likely that the demon ancestor Rahu would take advantage of the time when Haotian was fighting the 4 ferocious beasts to attack him. If they were slow, when Haotian was severely injured, it would not be a simple matter to pull the 4 ferocious beasts into the boundless starry sky. Evil beast die. As expected of the Taoist child who had followed Tao ancestor Hongjun for countless years, the moment he made his move, it was obvious that he was extraordinary. When Haotian attacked the 4 ferocious beasts, his figure suddenly split into 4, each facing one of the 4 ferocious beasts. This was the 3 corpses incarnation. Hundreds of millions of years of comprehension in the Purple Cloud Palace allowed Haotian to have an extremely deep understanding of the immortal path of Xianmen and the 3 corpses incarnation technique. The three corpses of good and evil. This was the best proof. Which ordinary Xianmen cultivator could kill the three corpses? Only those with extremely high cultivation could do it. Hao Yan's extraordinariness could be seen from this. Boom, boom, boom. As soon as the battle broke out, it entered a white-hot stage. Because every time Hao Yan attacked, he used all his strength, forcing the four ferocious beasts to fight with all their strength to avoid being injured. Not dying did not mean that it would not hurt. Roar, roar, roar. For a time, the painful howls of the four ferocious beasts resounded everywhere in the wilderness. At the same time, Feng Zichen, who was far away on the Emperor's Star, seeing that Hao Yan had forced the four ferocious beasts to fight with all their strength and gradually let down their guard against the outside world, he made his move. Boom. The Milky Way cosmic light array was activated in an instant. Endless starlight erupted and turned into four huge chains, whistling toward the four ferocious beasts. Whoosh! The chains broke through the air and directly wrapped around the necks of the four ferocious beasts when they were completely unprepared, forcefully pulling them toward the boundless starry sky. Whoosh! Whoosh! Of course, the four ferocious beasts were unwilling to be captured just like that. They quickly struggled violently. However, how could Hao Yan let go of this opportunity? Just as the four ferocious beasts were desperately trying to break free from the chains, a series of powerful and supreme magical powers blasted out from Hao Yan's hands, as if they were free, beating them until their skin and flesh were lacerated. Moreover, in a place where the four ferocious beasts could not see, the end of the chain formed by starlight was held in the hands of four terrifying figures standing on a huge star, pulling it hard. The four stars were the Emperor Star, the North Star, the South Pole, and the Moon. That's right. In addition to Feng Zichen and his two incarnations, the other one who made a move was Feng Zichen's wife, Moon Goddess Wangshu, who had not appeared for a long time. Others could not ask this great god to make a move, but Feng Zichen could. With the four of them making a move, coupled with Hao Yan's assistance, no matter how the four ferocious beasts struggled, they were clearly arranged. They could only watch helplessly as they were slowly pulled up from the ground and flew toward the boundless starry sky under the pull of the starlight chain. Just as Hao Yan was fighting with the four ferocious beasts, in the dark, many gazes were staring at Hao Yan's figure, waiting for the demon ancestor Rahu's sneak attack. However, even when the four ferocious beasts were captured by the chains, the demon ancestor Rahu did not make a move. Gradually, everyone was disappointed, thinking that the demon ancestor Rahu would not make a move this time. It seems that the bait this time is not good. Next time, I have to change to a target that the demon ancestor Rahu hates more. Everyone was quietly waiting for the development of the matter, as they silently considered. Even so, but other than Dao ancestor Hongjun, in the primordial world, who was more worthy of the demon ancestor Rahu's hatred than Hao Yan, there was probably no one. On the Emperor Star, although Feng Zichen was pulling the four ferocious beasts, part of his mind was still on Hao Yan, waiting for the demon ancestor Rahu to appear. The result was naturally disappointing. Why didn't the demon ancestor make a move? If he doesn't appear, there won't be a chance. Could it be that after an eon has passed, the demon ancestor's courage has gradually become smaller? The demon ancestor Rahu did not make a move, and Feng Zichen could not help but begin to let his imagination run wild. However, after his eyes swept across the primordial world, he suddenly had an idea and thought of a possibility. Chapter 586. At that time, all the experts in the primordial world were paying attention to Hao Yan, looking forward to the demon ancestor Rahu's attack. But what about the world tree? Now who would protect the world tree? Compared to the sneak attack on Hao Yan, it was obvious that the sneak attack on the world tree would cause more damage to the primordial world. Once the world tree broke, it would definitely be a disaster. Even if it could not cause the primordial world to fall into a world of destruction, it could destroy the great situation that everyone had worked so hard to create. If the world tree broke, the primordial world would collapse. If it caused a world-destroying disaster, the world would fall into chaos again. In addition, the connate murderous aura had not disappeared. With all kinds of disasters added together, the demon sect might have a tendency to recover. Compared to that, killing a mere Hautian was nothing. How much damage could it cause to the primordial world? It could not even cause the primordial world to fall into chaos temporarily. It was far more direct than destroying the world tree. At the very least, once there was a problem with the world tree, all their previous efforts would be in vain. Then why didn't they attack? Feng Zichen's heart raced as he figured out the key point. Now the world tree was unprotected. Wasn't it a great opportunity for the demon ancestor Rahu to attack? What a mistake! How could he forget the world tree at the critical moment? Something was wrong. Someone must have done something. Otherwise, how could Feng Zichen ignore the world tree so easily, given how important it was? Moreover, the person who did this must have a very strong cultivation. If not, even if Feng Zichen ignored the world tree, the rest of the people and the saints would not collectively ignore the world tree, right? To be able to make Feng Zichen and the other saints ignore the world tree at the same time. This kind of power was definitely not something an ordinary primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian could do. He directly blurred the concept of the world tree and made people subconsciously ignore it. This kind of method, this kind of power, almost surpassed that of primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian. In the primordial world, apart from Dao ancestor Hongjun who was far away in the sky screen, only the demon ancestor Rahu could do this. Who was the person who attacked? It was obvious. Demon ancestor Rahu. He was going to cut off the world tree. The old man was an old man. He aimed at the lifeline of the primordial world the moment he attacked. If he really succeeded, then the situation could really be completely reversed. Thinking of this, Feng Zichen was shocked. He could not care less about suppressing the 4 ferocious beasts. He quickly turned his head to look at the Tree of World. However, as far as he could see, everything around the world tree was still the same. There was nothing wrong with it. However, Feng Zichen's heart did not relax because of this. Instead, it gradually sank. Because the worry in his heart did not lessen. Instead, it became more intense. Sudden inspiration. It had been a long time since he had a sudden impulse. This meant that Feng Zichen's guess was correct. The goal of Rahu, the demon ancestor, was never Hautian, but the world tree, the first spiritual root of the primordial world. From the very beginning, fiend ancestor Rahu had planned on severing the world tree. However, he also understood that the Tree of World was another root of the untainted land after Mount Buzhou. It had gathered the attention of too many experts in the untainted land. Once he revealed his intention to attack the Tree of World, everyone would set up an inescapable net around the Tree of World in an instant, waiting for him to fall into the net. At that time, even if fiend ancestor Rahu attacked the Tree of World desperately, he would not be able to get close to the Tree of World, let alone cause any harm to it. Because halfway, he would be stopped by the experts of the untainted land who were risking their lives to stop him. The great mediums of the untainted land were very strange. Usually, they cherished their lives very much. Who knew how many life-saving methods they had on them? However, for the sake of the illusory righteousness and the safety of the untainted land, they immediately became desperate. Even if they died for it, they were not afraid or regretful at all. It was because of this that fiend ancestor Rahu did not directly attack the Tree of World. Instead, he secretly used his supreme magic to slowly fade the presence of the Tree of World in everyone's hearts. It was not until everyone forgot about the Tree of World and shifted their attention to something else that fiend ancestor Rahu revealed his fangs. This plan could be said to be perfect, because no one would have thought that fiend ancestor Rahu's strength could actually reach such an extent. And in fact, that was indeed the case. Looking at the current situation, fiend ancestor Rahu was almost completely successful. At the very least, all the great mediums of the untainted land had ignored the existence of the Tree of World. Unfortunately, fiend ancestor Rahu had met Feng Zichen, a person who could not be judged by common sense. In terms of cultivation, Feng Zichen was not ranked at all in the untainted land. As far as he knew, excluding the Chaos Fiend God, there were more than 5 people in the untainted land whose cultivation was higher than his. Of course, in the untainted land, cultivation was only cultivation. It could not determine a person's true strength. After all, there were too many external forces in the untainted land. With the support of all kinds of external forces, it could often allow a person to erupt with strength that far exceeded their own cultivation. And Fengzichen was one of the best. Under normal circumstances, under the envelopment of fiend ancestor Rahu's magic, even saints would be affected. Fengzichen was naturally no exception. In fact, that was indeed the case. Fengzichen was indeed affected. In the beginning he was the same as the saints, or even faster than them, completely ignoring the existence of the Tree of World. Until he accidentally saw the Tree of World when he scanned the untainted land. Only then did he realize that something was wrong. Although Fengzichen's cultivation was not ranked in the untainted land, he had many treasures on him. Whether it was the fragment of the jade disc of good fortune, or the extremely mysterious primordial treasure Hongmeng Daozhong, they were all treasures beyond the imagination of the world. It was precisely because of these two treasures that Fengzichen suddenly realized that something was wrong when he saw the Tree of World. The two treasures played a role at the first moment, eliminating the influence of fiend ancestor Rahu's magic on Fengzichen, making him remember the importance of the Tree of World. Therefore, fiend ancestor Rahu was a little unlucky. He did not fall into the hands of a powerful saint, but instead fell into the hands of Fengzichen, who was slightly weaker. Unfortunately, fiend ancestor Rahu did not know that Fengzichen was the variable of the untainted land that Pangu had decided on. In the untainted land, anything that was destined would change as long as it met him. And the deeper the involvement, the greater the change after that. From then on he would completely walk into the unknown. If fiend ancestor Rahu knew this, he would not have attacked the Tree of World. Instead, he would have turned to deal with Fengzichen and taken advantage of his unpreparedness to completely solve this variable. It was a pity. Fiend ancestor Rahu did not know anything. Of course, other than himself. Only Pangu knew about Fengzichen's identity. In fact, Pangu might even know more than Fengzichen himself. After all, Fengzichen had many secrets about himself that he did not know. It was really interesting. The saint treated Haoyan as a fool and manipulated his life and death. And fiend ancestor Rahu, he treated everyone, including the sages, as fools and toyed with them wantonly. Truly, there was always a mountain taller than the one before. From this, it could be seen that when one's strength reached a certain level, they could really do whatever they wanted. After this, Fengzichen's heart towards the Tao became even more determined. However, now was not the time to think about this. How to stop fiend ancestor Rahu from destroying the Tree of World was the key. Retrieve. Fengzichen's heart stirred slightly. The Gaochen, who was pulling the four great beasts, suddenly put down the chain in his hand and threw it directly to Fengzichen. Then, he broke through the void and headed directly below the heaven realm, where the ruins of Mount Buzhou were. And the Tree of World was rooted there, supporting the vast heaven realm. Although fiend ancestor Rahu was troublesome, the four great beasts were also troublesome. Fengzichen needed to suppress the four great beasts and could not leave for the time being. So he sent the Gaochen incarnation to look after the Tree of World. As for why it was Gaochen and not Luai's, that was because among Fengzichen's many incarnations, only the fall of Gaochen would not affect Fengzichen's interests. Instead, it would be beneficial to him. After all, the Gaochen incarnation was supposed to hide in the dark to be used as a deterrent. However, for the prosperity of the human race and the safety of the primordial world, the Gaochen incarnation had no choice but to walk out of the dark and walk in the primordial world with his true appearance. Now, the great calamity of the primordial world was coming to an end. Gaochen could use fiend ancestor Rahu to fake his death and escape again. Besides, did he really think that it was that easy to deal with fiend ancestor Rahu? Even if Fengzichen did not have the intention to fake his death, Gaochen had no hope of surviving against fiend ancestor Rahu. The difference in strength was too great. Not to mention Gaochen, even Fengzichen's original body would most likely die if he went. Since that was the case, Fengzichen thought that since he was going to die anyway, he might as well fake his death. In that case, if word got out in the future, It would be better to fake his death than to be beaten to death. This time, with the help of fiend ancestor Rahu, he could set things right and let the great Taoist priests die, once again. After thinking about it, Feng Zichen felt that it was not safe for Gao Chen to go alone. After a short hesitation, he sent Lui's incarnation out again. Although he wanted Gao Chen to fake his death with fiend ancestor Rahu's hands, it did not mean that he wanted to see the Tree of World destroyed by Rahu. Faking his death was important, but compared to the safety of the Tree of World, the Tree of World was obviously more important. At this point, Feng Zichen was clear about which was more important. With Lui's departure, the current situation had evolved into Feng Zichen suppressing the three ferocious beasts alone. In the face of such a situation, even if he was powerful, he could not help but feel a little pressured. But that was all. Although the four ferocious beasts were powerful, they were only at the beginning of primordial chaos. Feng Zichen alone could beat them up. Moreover, he also had the help of Haoyin and Wang Shu. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the void quietly split open, forming a huge spatial passage. In this passage, four chains surrounded by starlight were binding the four struggling ferocious beasts and pulling them toward the boundless starry sky. With the efforts of Feng Zichen and the others, the four ferocious beasts were getting closer and closer to the boundless starry sky. But halfway through, a sudden change occurred. 9 terrifying demonic shadows suddenly walked out of the void, broke through the void passage, cut off the chains that bound the four ferocious beasts, and rescued them. Chaos Demon Gods. These 9 people were all Chaos Demon Gods. 6 of them were the 6 people who had been severely injured by Feng Zichen and Haoyin earlier. And, looking at their auras, it was obvious that they had obtained some opportunity. They had already recovered from their injuries. One had to know that back then, in order to eliminate the demons, Feng Zichen and Haoyin had used the power of the Celestial Emperor to severely injure them. Logically speaking, with their injuries, they would not be able to recover without millions of years of recuperation. But now, not only had the 6 of them recovered from their injuries, but their strength had also increased a little. It was obvious that he had obtained some incredible fortune. If not for that, their injuries would not have healed so quickly. Perhaps it was the demon ancestor Rahu who had done it. The other 3 Chaos Demon Gods were 3 new faces. They were probably new Chaos Demon Gods who had successfully taken over the body. However, looking at the 9 Chaos Demon Gods, Feng Zichen had a vague feeling that it would not be long before the great masters who were fighting with the Chaos Demon Gods for control of their bodies would break out of seclusion. These were the true combat power of the primordial world. Once the great masters of the primordial world broke out of seclusion one after another, the demonic calamity that had almost brought a disaster to the primordial world would almost be over. No matter how powerful the demon ancestor Rahu was, he would not be able to do anything under the joint forces of so many great masters. However, that was all in the future. Now Feng Zichen was most worried about the Tree of World. The Chaos Demon God had already made his move. Would it be far before the demon ancestor Rahu made his move? Thinking of this, Feng Zichen was extremely worried. He did not care about the Chaos Demon God in front of him, and the 4 great ferocious beasts that had escaped. He quickly switched to the vision of the North Star incarnation to observe the situation around the Tree of World. However, the result was still the same as before. There was nothing unusual. Obviously, the demon ancestor Rahu was still waiting for the opportunity. Seeing that the demon ancestor Rahu did not make a move, Feng Zichen looked much calmer. He mobilized the power of the galaxy cosmic light formation and continued to attack the 4 great ferocious beasts. The Chaos Demon God had come here to save the 4 great ferocious beasts. How could he allow them to continue being suppressed by Feng Zichen? Therefore, after seeing Feng Zichen make a move, they did not hesitate to join forces and attack. Boom, boom, boom. The starlight was dazzling. It fell from the galaxy like a meteor, blooming with the most beautiful light. Before the Chaos Demon Celestial could go far, he was blasted back by the endless meteors. After the meteor shower disappeared, they could no longer get close to Feng Zichen. This was because the incarnations of the saints hidden in the dark had all made their moves. The 12 top primordial chaos experts attacked the 9 chaos demon gods with their strongest killing moves. The chaos demon god was not afraid at all. He went up to them with his strongest stance. However, from the very beginning, this battle was destined to be unfair. Chapter 587. On the Emperor's Star. Feng Zichen seized the opportunity and activated the Galaxy Cosmic Light Array with all his might. He formed the Wheel of Time and Space and blasted it toward the 9 Chaos Demon Gods. Being attacked from both sides was the current situation that the 9 Chaos Demon Gods were facing. In front of them were the Saints' clones and Haotian's joint attack, and behind them, Feng Zichen was controlling the Zhousing to interfere with their actions. In such a situation, even if the 9 Chaos Demon Gods were powerful, they were gradually at a disadvantage. On the other side, Wang Shu was not idle. He took the opportunity when the Chaos Demon Gods were fighting with everyone, and continued to activate the origin power of the lunar star to wrap around the 4 ferocious beasts. In response, the 4 ferocious beasts naturally struggled with all their might. However, Wang Shu was not the only one on the lunar star. There was also the lunar laurel tree. Although the combined strength of these two people could not completely suppress the 4 ferocious beasts, they could still wrap them up and slowly approach the boundless starry sky. Friends, be careful of the world tree. At this moment, taking advantage of the outbreak of the chaotic battle, Feng Zichen finally had a chance to hide from the eyes and ears of the demon ancestor Rahu. He transmitted his voice to everyone and told them about the world tree. This matter could not be publicized at all. Otherwise, when the demon ancestor Rahu saw that the situation was not right, he would definitely be alert and give up this plan. That would not do. Everyone was waiting for the demon ancestor Rahu to make a move. They could not let him give up so easily. The demon ancestor used his supreme magic to deceive people and make them ignore the existence of the world tree. After Feng Zichen saw through the demon ancestor Rahu's plan, of course, he could use this plan as bait to plot against the demon ancestor Rahu. When everyone's eyes were focused on the world tree, it would be fine if the demon ancestor Rahu did not make a move, but once he made a move, what was waiting for him would be the siege of everyone. What? The world tree? With Feng Zichen's reminder, ancestral fiend Rahu's divine ability gradually lost its effect. Everyone's hearts trembled, and they suddenly broke through the fog that covered their hearts. They understood some of the inconsistencies that they had overlooked. They had been schemed against by the demon ancestor Rahu. For a time, everyone's expressions were extremely unsightly. To think that they usually boasted that they were invincible in the primordial world. In the end, they did not know that they had been schemed against. They had really embarrassed themselves. Demon ancestor Rahu. What a good move. Although everyone was ashamed and angry, they didn't show it on their faces. They didn't stop attacking the chaos demon god. But in the dark, they quietly shifted their attention to the Tree of World, carefully sensing the movements around it. Once they found something out of place, they would definitely destroy it with lightning speed. Rumble. In the sky, the battle became even more intense. The Heavenly Emperor, the Saints, the Star Lord, the Moon God, the Chaos Fiend God, the 4 ferocious beasts, and all the experts charged at their opponents without holding back, trying to finish them off as quickly as possible. Is this the world tree? Supporting the myriad of worlds and communicating with the endless dimensions, as expected of a rare chaos spiritual root. If you're given enough time to grow, it's not impossible for you to become an existence like the Chaos Supreme Treasure, the Chaos Green Lotus. Or you can become a great chaos fiend god and amaze the entire chaos. Along with the whispers, a transcendent figure filled with supreme Taoist rhymes quietly appeared beside the Tree of World, carefully sizing it up. Demon ancestor Rahu. The person who came was the former number 1 in the Eldritch world, demon ancestor Rahu. Seeing the person who came, the Gaochen and Luai's pupils shrank. An indescribable sense of oppression suddenly attacked their hearts, causing their bodies to tense up unconsciously. Danger. Extreme danger. Although demon ancestor Rahu looked no different from an ordinary person, the Gaochen and Luai still felt great danger from him. This was the realm of returning to one's original state. Those with low cultivation might not feel anything, but the higher one's cultivation was, the more they could feel how terrifying it was. Luais and the Gauchin stared at demon ancestor Rahu, but they didn't dare to move. They were waiting for an opportunity to attack. Facing demon ancestor Rahu, the two of them truly understood how terrifying the ancestor of the demonic path was. With their strength in front of demon ancestor Rahu, they only had one chance to attack. After that attack, regardless of whether it worked or not, the two of them would be killed by demon ancestor Rahu. Although he had tried his best to overestimate demon ancestor Rahu's strength, Feng Zichen suddenly realized that he had underestimated demon ancestor Rahu's strength when he saw him in person. The feeling demon ancestor Rahu gave him was something he had felt from the celestial emperor's incarnation. That was the power he felt when he joined forces with Haotian and saw the true celestial emperor's incarnation. That realm was the 12th heaven of primordial chaos. The realm of primordial chaos. Demon ancestor Rahu had reached the end of the primordial chaos Dao realm and was about to reach a higher realm, the limitless Dao realm. That's right. The realm after primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian was called the limitless Daoyuo Jingxian. Limitless. 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 It was invisible, silent, colorless, without beginning or end, without name, so it was called limitless. After knowing demon ancestor Rahu's true strength, Feng Zichen could not help but worry. Could they really stop demon ancestor Rahu if they joined forces? Moreover, demon ancestor Rahu's probing was probably not because he was worried about them, but because he was looking for the backup plan left behind by Dao ancestor Hongjun. Now, since demon ancestor Rahu had already appeared, it meant that the primordial world no longer had any means to threaten him. The backup plan left behind by Dao ancestor Hongjun had all been taken care of by him. Since Gauchin and Luais could see demon ancestor Rahu naturally saw them too. However, demon ancestor Rahu did not pay attention to the two of them. Instead, he looked at the world tree with an extremely conflicted expression. It seemed that he could not bear to attack it. I really can't bear to destroy you. After sizing up the world tree for a long time, demon ancestor Rahu said reluctantly. He, who had the inheritance of the chaos fiend god, knew better than anyone what the chaos spirit root represented. It was the embryo of the chaos fiend god, the embryonic form of the chaos treasure. With the vastness of the chaos, there were naturally many chaos spirit roots. Among them, the most famous was the chaos treasure, chaos green lotus. That's right, the chaos green lotus was also a chaos spirit root. However, unlike the world tree which was still in the growth stage, the chaos green lotus had already entered the mature stage. Therefore, the chaos green lotus was the chaos treasure. The world tree was at most a connate treasure. To become an existence like the chaos green lotus, it still needed endless years of growth. Other than the chaos green lotus, the other chaos spirit roots were able to take form for various reasons. They could walk in the vast chaos in the name of the chaos fiend god. For example, the predecessors of Zhuan-Ti, the wisdom fiend god, and the clear heart fiend god. These two great existences were born from the chaos spirit roots. The chaos spirit roots had such a great background. From this, one could see the potential of the world tree. Therefore, demon ancestor Rahu did not want to destroy it. If he could take it for himself, whether it was used to breed the chaos fiend god, or to cultivate it into a chaos treasure, it would be excellent. Unfortunately, because the world tree supported the sky, he couldn't allow others to take it for themselves. Therefore, demon ancestor Rahu decided to destroy the world tree and trigger the calamity of heaven to fight for another opportunity for the demon sect. What a pity! Looking at the world tree again, demon ancestor Rahu shook his head regretfully and was about to cut down the world tree. From the beginning to the end, he did not even look at Gauchin and Luais. Obviously, he did not take them seriously. Whoosh! A blood-red light bloomed from demon ancestor Rahu's hand, and gradually formed a blood-red longsword in front of him. Boundless killing intent spread out, sending chills down one's spine. Slash! With a light flick, the blood-red longsword moved in response and shot toward the world tree. It was also at this moment that Gauchin and Luais attacked together. Whoosh, two huge scrolls, the myriad sword illustration and the myriad god illustration, appeared from their bodies. They tore through the air and collided with the blood-red longsword. Bang! The blood-red longsword was destroyed, but the myriad sword illustration and the myriad god illustration did not fare well either. The spiritual light on them dimmed, the swords were broken, and the myriad god illustration died. They had clearly suffered heavy injuries and could not be used again in a short period of time. So powerful. Luais and Gauchen were shocked when they saw the damage on their treasures after retrieving them. Demon ancestor Raha's casual attack had forced them to fight with their full strength. The difference between them was obvious. Not bad. Not bad. You can actually block my attack. No wonder my demon gate did not dare to appear in the world. I don't know if you can take the next attack. Demon ancestor Rahu turned to look at the two and waved his hand again. Four longswords suddenly appeared in the void and pointed at the four of them. The four swords were so familiar. Luais and Gauchen, who were of the same mind as Xianqing, immediately recognized the origin of the four swords. They were the Khanate cardinal treasures, the four immortal slaying swords. However, it was not the actual body, but a wisp of sword intent. It was an extremely pure sword intent that was sharper than the four immortal slaying swords. There was nothing wrong with it. The four immortal slaying swords did not have such powerful power in the beginning. It was demon ancestor Rahu who collected the resentment of all living beings on Mount Meru and refined it again that created his peerless reputation. The concept behind demon ancestor Rahu's creation of the four immortal slaying swords was based on his understanding of the path of slaughter. What was in front of Gauchen and Luais was the sword intent used to create the four immortal slaying swords. After countless years of refining by demon ancestor Rahu, its power had increased by more than several times. The purity of the sword intent was even higher than the sword intent of the four immortal slaying swords. Go. With a gentle wave of his hand, demon ancestor Rahu's four immortal slaying swords were about to end the two of them. However, he did not get what he wanted. It was not that Gauchen and Luais blocked it, but that the people who had been paying attention to this place had made their move. They first forced away the chaos demon gods who were fighting with them. Then they took out their treasures and attacked demon ancestor Rahu. Rumble. In an instant, all kinds of brilliance bloomed between heaven and earth, drowning demon ancestor Rahu. It was Tao light. It was an invincible divine ability. Each divine ability was enough to severely injure primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian, and there were 16 of them. Even a saint would be severely injured if he faced such an attack head-on. Unfortunately, it was useless against demon ancestor Rahu. When the light faded, the aftermath of the divine ability dissipated, and the world returned to normal. Demon ancestor Rahu's figure finally appeared. However, other than looking a little wretched on the outside, but he didn't suffer much internal damage. This all-out attack from everyone did not severely injure demon ancestor Rahu. Instead, it aroused his ferocious nature. So all of you are here. Then die together, so that I don't have to look for you one by one. Demon ancestor Rahu turned his head to look at everyone and smiled coldly. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of immortal slaying sword intents were condensed and whizzed toward everyone. At the same time, the chaos demon gods who were forced away by everyone also seized the opportunity to use their strongest divine ability to attack everyone. You're courting death. On the Emperor's star, Feng Zichen saw this scene, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. His mind merged with Panga's divine being, and he took out the Khanate cardinal treasure Zhoxing painting and swept it toward the 9 chaos demon gods. Bang, 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 bang. In the boundless starry sky, Panga's divine being could exert power comparable to a 9th-level chaotic prime. Coupled with the Khanate cardinal treasure Zhoxing painting, the power that erupted was terrifying. With just one blow, the 9 chaos demon gods were all swept away, greatly relieving the pressure on everyone. But even so, the immortal slaying sword intent from demon ancestor Rahu still brought them a lot of trouble. But it was not a big deal. Among the saint incarnations present, apart from Zhuanti's incarnation, the rest were all rich and did not lack Khanate spiritual treasures at all. They were even armed to the teeth. Although demon ancestor Rahu's attack was strong, with these Khanate spiritual treasures, everyone was able to handle it with ease. Fellow Taoists, I'll leave the 9 chaos demon gods and the 4 ferocious beasts to you. Fellow Taoist Haotian and I need to go to the Tree of World to support our fellow Taoists of the South Pole and North Star, and fight against the demon ancestor together. In the starry sky, Feng Zichen's figure appeared. He first bowed to everyone, then called out Haotian and rushed to the Tree of World together. In the current untainted land, only the Celestial Emperor's incarnation could deal with demon ancestor Rahu. Even God Pangu could not do it. The gap between 9th level chaotic prime and 12th level chaotic prime was still too big. That was why Feng Zichen called Haotian. He planned to gather the power of the 4 to jointly summon the Celestial Emperor's incarnation to fight against demon ancestor Rahu. Haotian naturally understood this, so he did not hesitate to follow Feng Zichen after Feng Zichen joined him. Everyone was a little confused. They did not know where they got the confidence to deal with demon ancestor Rahu. It was not their fault. Far away in the sky screen, they were inevitably a little uninformed. They had not seen the scene of Feng Zichen and the others jointly summoning the Celestial Emperor's incarnation. Otherwise, they wouldn't be surprised. The 5 emperors had a joint attack. The 6 saints naturally had one too. The former summoned the Celestial Emperor, while the latter summoned the Heavenly Tao. After Feng Zichen and Haotian left, without the suppression of the boundless starry sky, the pressure on the Chaos Demon God was reduced. He became stronger and continued to fight with the Saint incarnations. However, compared to the Chaos Demon God, the Saint incarnations had an obvious advantage, and that was that they were not afraid of death. Chapter 588. As incarnations, how could they be afraid of death? As long as their original bodies were unharmed, these incarnations could be reformed even if they were smashed into nothingness. Therefore, when these incarnations fought with the demon celestial of chaos, they did not care about their own safety at all. They did not hesitate to use the method of exchanging lives to severely injure the demon celestial of chaos, and even keep them here. Although the strength of the two sides was equal, one side had scruples while the other side did not care about life and death. Wasn't it obvious who had the upper hand? Under the fierce attack of the incarnations of the saints, the demon celestial of chaos gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. He was even more miserable in his heart, but in order to stop them, he had to hold on bitterly. The demon celestial of chaos was suffering, and so were the 4 ferocious beasts. It was not that Wang Shu and the lunar laurel tree were too ferocious, but that in order to face such a complicated situation, Feng Zichen had to reveal a trump card in advance. On the sun star, the Fusang tree, which had been hidden for a long time, walked out of the dark and activated the power of the sun star to suppress the 4 ferocious beasts. In the early years, the Fusang tree came out in order to transform. At the price of surrendering, Feng Zichen agreed to condense an embryo of the god of the sun for it to transform into a human form. It had been a long time since Feng Zichen made the deal with the Fusang tree. The Fusang tree had already fulfilled its wish, and was able to transform into a connate Taoist figure. However, in order to keep a trump card for himself, so that it would be convenient for him to trick others in the future, Feng Zichen used the cosmic light formation of the Milky Way to isolate the anomaly when the Fusang tree was born. He also told the Fusang tree to hide its identity, and try not to expose its existence. Therefore, except for Feng Zichen and the Fusang tree, no one in the untainted land knew about its existence. This was a chess piece that Feng Zichen had set up long ago to prevent anyone from having designs on the sun star. But now, the situation in the untainted land suddenly deteriorated. Feng Zichen was concerned about the safety of all living beings in the world, so he had no choice but to reveal his hidden trump card, the connate Fusang tree. After all, at this time, every extra combat power that was sent out would give him an extra advantage. Although the innate Fusang tree's strength had only reached the half-step primordial chaos realm, and was still some distance away from the true primordial chaos Tao realm, things weren't that simple. Although the innate Fusang tree wasn't strong, the sun star was. As a connate god fiend nurtured by the sun star's origin, and as one of the top 10 spirit roots of the primeval universe, it had been suppressing the sun star for many years. Therefore, its mark had long been closely connected with the sun star. Therefore, the innate Fusang tree had the ability to control the origin of the sun. With the support of the sun star origin, it was enough to allow the innate Fusang tree to unleash a power comparable to that of primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian. Of course, this was not the reason why Feng Zichen asked the innate Fusang tree to take action. As the saying goes, the great yin, the mature weak, the mature strong? Yin and yang coexist, and the world reigns supreme. The extreme yin and extreme yang were the most fundamental forces in the world. Once they merged, they would unleash an extremely terrifying power. In the untainted land, the lunar star and the solar star were the ones who had described the power of yin and yang to the extreme. Coincidentally, there was a supreme grade connate spiritual root growing on each of the two supreme stars. The innate lunar osmanthus tree and the innate Fusang tree. Back then, Dijun and Shihi joined forces and evolved the scene of the sun and moon appearing at the same time. The power of the great yang and the power of the great yin surged out, and their power could be said to be shocking. Even saints had to avoid them. But now, Feng Zichen sent out the innate Fusang tree to let it join forces with the innate lunar osmanthus tree to develop the power of the sun and moon wheel, and recreate this great power. These two innate divine trees had been rooted here since the birth of the sun star and the moon star. It could be said that they had grown up together, and had a deep connection. It was easy for them to mobilize the power of the origin of the two supreme stars. When the two of them joined forces, the power they unleashed might not be weaker than that of Dijun and Shihi. If not for that, Dijun and Shihi wouldn't be afraid of the innate Fusang tree and the innate lunar osmanthus tree, and be unwilling to help them transform. As soon as the innate Fusang tree took action, the innate lunar osmanthus tree on the sun star immediately sensed it. This was also a very normal thing. The Fusang tree and the lunar osmanthus tree. One represented the path of the sun, and the other represented the path of the moon. They were the two extremes of yin and yang, and they were both the 10 great spiritual roots of the primordial world. They must have sensed each other. Moreover, the thought of a quasi-saint was boundless. Although the distance between the sun star and the moon star was far, it was not greater than the range of the quasi-saint's thought. Since the creation of the world, the two innate divine trees had been able to sense each other. The two of them must have communicated and formed a deep friendship. It might be possible if the two of them had not communicated when their cultivation levels were low. However, it would be ridiculous if they had not communicated with each other after their cultivation levels had increased. Therefore, the innate Fusang tree and the innate lunar osmanthus tree, they could be said to be old friends. There was a tacit understanding between them. Therefore, the moment the innate Fusang tree activated the sun star, the innate lunar osmanthus tree also made a move. He took over the control of the moon star from Wang Shu's hands and activated the moon star with all his might, resonating with the sun star from afar. Rumble. At some point, the sun star and the moon star achieved some kind of resonance and stimulated a great power. In an instant, the entire primordial world was covered by the radiance of the sun star and the moon star. The sun and the moon shone together. At this moment, all living beings in the primordial world saw a rare scene that was hard to come by in hundreds of millions of years. All the stars were covered by the radiance of the sun star and the moon star, and it was difficult to see their traces. It was as if the sun star and the moon star were the only two stars left in the boundless starry sky. Rumble. The scorching and domineering power of the sun star flowed out from the sun star and covered half of the starry sky. The bone-chilling power of the moon star flowed out from the moon star and covered half of the starry sky. Bang! The two most extreme powers of the world, the moon star and the sun star, met in the void. They seemed to fuse and converge. The two extreme powers entangled with each other in the starry sky. Sizzle. Yin and yang combined, and creation was born. Yin and yang circulated, and thunder surged. Terrifying thunderbolts were born at the place where the power of the sun and the power of the moon star converged. They carried the mighty power of destroying creation, and struck fiercely at the four ferocious beasts. The thunderbolts struck down, and it was as if the sea of thunder was tilting. Billions of thunderbolts struck down. Rumble. It was as if the world was beating a drum. It was as if the great Tao was vibrating. the area where the 4 ferocious beasts were turned into a sea of thunder in the blink of an eye. The 4 ferocious beasts that were struggling with all their might were bathed in the sea of thunder. In an instant, their bodies were charred black and they gradually gave up struggling. They were electrocuted until they had no strength left. Whoosh, the power of yin and yang was changing. It gradually changed from the endless rotation to slowly fusing. Thus, the sea of thunder disappeared, and the boundless creation chi was born. It turned into 4 huge chains that firmly trapped the 4 ferocious beasts and pulled them into the boundless starry sky. This time, the 4 ferocious beasts were seriously injured by the sea of thunder and had no strength to resist. Therefore, they were soon pulled into the boundless starry sky. Before entering the boundless starry sky, they were powerless to resist, let alone after entering. They had completely lost their freedom. In the boundless starry sky, little Mount Bujo, which stood in the center of the stars, trembled slightly. A terrifying aura that suppressed the past, present, and future was released from its body, firmly suppressing the 4 ferocious beasts. As the largest fragment of Mount Bujo, with the power of Zhoxing and the nourishment of Pengu, little Mount Bujo could be said to have perfectly inherited everything from Mount Bujo except for its lack of power. Therefore, the suppression of little Mount Bujo not only restricted their freedom, but also suppressed their space-time, will and everything else. In other words, from now on, everything about the 4 ferocious beasts stopped at the moment before they were suppressed. There was no change. Time stopped flowing on their bodies, and their will also stagnated. Struggle? It did not exist. In the boundless starry sky, the 4 ferocious beasts had lost everything. Actually, that was not right. After the 4 ferocious beasts were suppressed by the boundless starry sky, it was not that they had no way to save themselves. At the very least, the evil thoughts that originated from the hearts of all living beings, they were still gathering on the 4 ferocious beasts to increase their strength. If such a situation was not stopped and allowed to continue developing, it would be a mistake. Then, one day in the future, the strength of the 4 ferocious beasts would increase to an unimaginable level and break through the suppression of the boundless starry sky. Unfortunately, such a situation would never happen, because after suppressing the 4 ferocious beasts, the galactic cosmic ray formation and the Panga god began to operate. Among them, the ones with the greatest movements were the 4 mansions of the Big Dipper system. Roar as the stars rotated, Old Man, Vermilion Bird, White Tiger and Black Tortoise, the phantoms of the 4 sacred beasts slowly appeared. Each of them chose a ferocious beast and suppressed it. After that, endless starlight gathered. It turned into 4 huge cauldrons. They slowly devoured the 4 ferocious beasts. At the same time, the god Pengu took the chaos chi from the chaos outside the realm, and used it as a material to ignite a raging fire. He burned it towards the 4 great cauldrons and began to refine the 4 great ferocious beasts. This fire, extraordinary fire, it was not an immortal fire either. It was not an innate fire either. It was the fire of chaos. A powerful flame that came from the vast chaos. This flame, it was extremely powerful and difficult to find in the primordial world. Back then, Feng Zichen tried to deduce this fire, but he failed. In fact, not to mention him. Even someone as powerful as the ancestral witch Zhurong, who was known as the ruler of fire, could not use the fire of chaos. From this, it could be seen that it was difficult to refine the fire of chaos. But this was only for others. In the hands of the god Pengu, even the fire of chaos could be controlled by his heart. It could change as he wished without any difficulty. After all, to a certain extent, the god Pengu was equivalent to the projection of Pengu. He basically possessed all his abilities. A mere flame of primal chaos was nothing. It was the other treasures. For example, innate spirit treasures, chaos divine water, and so on. As long as Feng Zichen was willing to pay the price, he could use the god Pengu to condense them. Everything in the primordial world was transformed by Pengu. As his projection, the god Pengu could transform matter at a certain price. Naturally, he could nurture some extremely precious treasures. It was just that the price was a little high. Boom boom boom. The fire of chaos burned fiercely, causing the refining power in the cauldron to greatly increase. Soon, a large amount of origin energy was refined from the bodies of the 4 great ferocious beasts. Then it was refined by the god Pengu and turned into the purest origin energy. It fused into the Zhousing and repaired its damaged origin. The 4 great ferocious beasts, whose wills had fallen into a stagnant state, could not even sense anything, let alone struggle or resist. They could only be refined by the boundless starry sky. Pop! Under the refining of the boundless starry sky, the power of the 4 great ferocious beasts decreased rapidly. It did not take long for them to fall from the level of origin to that of the great perfection of sage to be. At this moment, the threat of the 4 great ferocious beasts was greatly reduced. The fire of chaos began to shrink gradually, and the refining power was greatly reduced. When the refining speed of the boundless starry sky and the power of the 4 great ferocious beasts were gradually equal, the fire of chaos finally stopped shrinking and the refining power stabilized. At this point, every time the power of the 4 great ferocious beasts increased, the boundless starry sky would refine them a little. Thus, the power of the 4 great ferocious beasts was maintained at the level of the great perfection of sage to be. This level was just right. It was neither too weak nor too strong, and would not threaten the stability of the boundless starry sky. When the 4 great ferocious beasts were completely suppressed by the boundless starry sky, the innate Fusang tree and the innate lunar Kasha tree were free to drive the sun star, and the sun star to attack the demon celestial of chaos. With this help, the pressure on the incarnations of the sages was greatly reduced. In the battle in the boundless starry sky, the primordial world had gained a huge advantage and completely suppressed the demon celestial of chaos. However, the key to determining the outcome of this battle was not here, but at the Tree of World. There, the battle between Feng Zichen, Hao Tian, and the demon ancestor Rahu was the key to determining the future of the primordial world. Why did the demon ancestor Rahu need humans? The number 1 expert of the primordial world suppressed Tao ancestor Hongjun in every way, forcing him to invite many experts to join forces to besiege the demon ancestor Rahu. Only then did he win a Pyrrhic victory. Such an expert naturally had his pride. Therefore, when he saw Feng Zichen and Hao Tian rushing over, although the demon ancestor Rahu guessed their thoughts, he did not stop them. Of course, it was not only because of his pride, but also because he felt the pressure. The current demon ancestor Rahu needed the pressure too much. When one's strength reached his level, it was almost the peak. It could be said that it was extremely difficult to take another step forward. Therefore, the demon ancestor Rahu needed enough pressure to force him to take another step forward. In the past, with Tao ancestor Hongjun, the demon ancestor Rahu could feel enough pressure to compete with him. That was why the two of them could stand out among the Khanate god fiends. Unfortunately, after the Taoist fiend war, although both of them had taken a step forward and advanced to the primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian, it was difficult for them to fight again. It was because Tao ancestor Hongjun had integrated the Tao. Chapter 589. After Tao unification. Although Hongjun was not the heavenly Tao, the heavenly Tao was Hongjun. How great was the power of the heavenly Tao? How could demon ancestor Rahu contend with it? Therefore, after this, demon ancestor Rahu was no longer a match for Tao ancestor Hongjun. At this time, if demon ancestor Rahu still wanted to fight with Tao ancestor Hongjun, he would not be feeling the pressure, but courting death. After losing his competitors, demon ancestor Rahu no longer had any pressure. His cultivation speed began to gradually slow down until he cultivated to the extreme of primordial chaos, the 12th level, and could no longer advance. Therefore, in order to seek a breakthrough, demon ancestor Rahu desperately needed pressure. This was the reason why he launched the calamity of the demon sect. He wanted to use the crisis of the primordial world's destruction to force the great experts hidden in the primordial world to join forces to deal with him, so as to give him enough pressure to break through. In fact, demon ancestor Rahu did get what he wanted. He finally felt the long-lost pressure from the celestial emperor's incarnation. Therefore, when Feng Zichen and Hao Tian rushed over, demon ancestor Rahu did not stop them. Instead, He allowed them to join forces and summon the Celestial Emperor's incarnation. To be honest, in the heart of demon ancestor Rahu, whether it was the plan of the Chaos Fiend God or the future of the demon sect, nothing was more important than his cultivation breakthrough. After all, in the primordial world, everything could be illusory. Strength was the only thing that mattered. That was what truly belonged to him. As long as he could step into the legendary limitless Tao realm, would the demon sect still have to worry about not prospering? One had to know. Everything in the primordial world revolved around strength. As long as one was strong enough, it could be said that the world revolved around one, and one was almost omnipotent. Under the world tree, the four of them joined forces to release the power of the heavenly gods. From the origin of the world, they summoned a supreme celestial emperor's incarnation, a peerless incarnation with strength comparable to the 12th level of primordial chaos. After summoning the celestial emperor's incarnation, the four of them felt a little unsafe. Then they used supreme creation methods to change their state of existence, transforming themselves into the purest origin power, and poured it into the celestial emperor's incarnation. Boom. For a moment, the aura of the celestial emperor's incarnation rose again, reaching the pinnacle of primordial chaos and flawless perfection, faintly, to compete with demon ancestor Rahu. Unfortunately, the Earth Empress is not here. Otherwise, if the five of us joined forces, we would be able to use the true power of a heavenly emperor. When that happens, even if fiend ancestor Rahu were to break into the infinite Tao realm, he would be able to suppress him with a flip of his hand. Feng Zichen muttered to himself inside the Sky Emperor's incarnation. Among the four Imperials, the absence of the Earth Empress did not seem to be a big problem, but in fact, the impact was beyond imagination. A flawless celestial emperor could perfectly control the power of the entire primitive world. With the foundation of the primordial world, the celestial emperor who could control all of his power could reach a level far beyond the infinite Tao realm. With such strength, it would be extremely easy for him to defeat Rahu, who was still in the realm of primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian. However, it was somewhat unfortunate. The turmoil in the underworld was no less than the turmoil in the Great Desolate Aeon. The Earth Empress still needed to unite with the great practitioners of the Nether Realm to protect the Nether Realm and ensure the stability of the 6 paths of reincarnation. However, he could not find the time to leave the Netherworld and head to the Great Desolate World to provide reinforcements. The mighty power of heaven and earth can be said to be endless. It's truly admirable. Just 4 juniors who haven't even reached the primordial chaos realm can actually reach such a powerful level with the support of the mighty power of heaven and earth. It makes me feel quite a bit of pressure. Not bad at all. Perhaps the opportunity to make a breakthrough in essence lies with you. After Feng Zichen and Hao Tian were ready, fiend ancestor Rahu said in shock. He could not help but be shocked. He could kill 4 cultivators who had not reached the primordial chaos realm with a flick of his finger. However, these 4 little cultivators, who he did not take seriously, could erupt with power that was not inferior to his under the support of the mighty power of heaven and earth. This was somewhat awe-inspiring. Heaven and earth was still the same heaven and earth. Even though it was damaged, it was still powerful beyond imagination. In the blink of an eye, it created an almost invincible expert. In the primordial world, the higher one's realm was, the more one could feel the terror of heaven and earth. It was extremely vast, as if there was no boundary. Too powerful. No matter what, the creation of the primordial world was built on the corpses of Pangu and the 3,000 chaos demon gods. The origin would not be weak no matter what. I hope you won't disappoint me. With a soft whisper, fiend ancestor Rahu arrived. An extremely illusory sword intent appeared in his hand and attacked the celestial emperor's incarnation. Whoosh, boundless killing intent filled the air. It was bone-chilling, as if it could freeze time and space and destroy everything. Suppress. Knowing that they might not be a match for fiend ancestor Rahu, Feng Zichen and Hao Tian did not dare to hold back. They attacked with killing moves. Just as the long sword filled with killing intent was about to slash the celestial emperor's incarnation, time and space began to distort. A 33-story creation pagoda descended from the sky and smashed onto the long sword, suppressing it. Khanate Cardinal Treasure. Miluotian Primordial Pagoda. Buzz. 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 The pagoda shook slightly, and the creation chi surged out. It evolved into all kinds of mysterious Dao patterns, and shattered the long sword. After that, the creation chi did not stop. It covered the sky and the earth and crushed toward fiend ancestor Rahu. It was also at this time that the Celestial Emperor's incarnation took the initiative to attack. He revealed a huge four-headed, 8-armed Dharma idol. As the 8 arms waved, he used all kinds of mysterious supreme divine powers to attack fiend ancestor Rahu. To be precise, the four-headed, 8-armed Dharma idol was not a divine ability, but Feng Zichen, Hao Tian, Luais and Gaochen. After the 4 of them merged with the Celestial Emperor's incarnation, in order to better unleash their combat strength, they worked together to evolve the four-headed, 8-armed Dharma idol. Each of them occupied 1 head and 2 arms. Gaochen and Luais were Feng Zichen's incarnations. Naturally, they could communicate with him. However, Feng Zichen and Hao Tian were indeed 2 people. Moreover, they were 2 people who were suspicious of each other. Under such circumstances, even if the 2 of them occupied 1 body, how could they communicate with each other? In a battle between experts, a moment of distraction was enough to determine life and death. Therefore, in order to deal with fiend ancestor Rahu, and also to save their lives and to better unleash the power of the Celestial Emperor's incarnation, the 4 of them each took 1 side and worked together to evolve the four-headed, 8-armed Dharma idol to fight fiend ancestor Rahu. With a thought from Feng Zichen, the Zhouxing painting tore through the air and turned into stars that filled the sky. It evolved into a vast precept domain that enveloped fiend ancestor Rahu and weakened his power as much as possible. Hao Tian, Luais and Gaochen also took out their Dharma treasures and used their strongest techniques to attack fiend ancestor Rahu, hoping to kill him in 1 blow. As the Celestial Emperor's incarnation waved its 8 arms, Khanate spiritual treasures bloomed with brilliant light. Supreme divine powers emitted shocking Taoist rhymes. All kinds of techniques were unleashed at once. In the blink of an eye, fiend ancestor Rahu was drowned. As for fiend ancestor Rahu, in the face of such a terrifying attack, not only did he not show any fear, he became even more excited. Haha, good timing. Only such an attack can bring enough pressure to me. Obliterating millstone, kill for me. Amidst his laughter, fiend ancestor Rahu suddenly took out a huge millstone. In an instant, scenes of heaven and earth sinking and the destruction of the universe appeared. At the same time, endless destructive aura emanated from the huge millstone as if it was going to destroy everything. Rumble. Under fiend ancestor Rahu's control, the obliterating millstone started to rotate. An unparalleled force suddenly descended, distorting space-time and forming a huge vortex around it. It swallowed the Celestial Emperor's incarnation's attack. Sizzle. As the millstone rotated, destructive aura overflowed. Space-time collapsed and all Daos disintegrated. Under such power, the attack that fell into the millstone was completely crushed in an instant. The annihilating demon god's Khanate spiritual treasure, obliterating millstone? In the Celestial Emperor's incarnation, Feng Zichen could not help but narrow his eyes when he saw the millstone. He was extremely shocked. This was because he recognized the origin of this treasure. This treasure was called the obliterating millstone. It was the top chaos spiritual treasure, second only to chaos ultimate treasures. It was named the obliterating world. One could imagine how powerful this treasure was. Moreover, although chaos spiritual treasures were on the same level as Khanate ultimate treasures, their upper limits were different. The upper limits of chaos spiritual treasures were higher than Khanate ultimate treasures. The level of chaos spiritual treasures, just like the level of cultivators, Khanate ultimate treasures were comparable to chaos primordial experts. As for chaos spiritual treasures, they included the realm of chaos primordial and above. In other words, the limit of Khanate ultimate treasures. Only the early stage of chaos spiritual treasures. As the top chaos spiritual treasure, the power that the obliterating millstone could exert was definitely above the chaos primordial realm. Fortunately, during the splitting tribulation, the owner of the obliterating millstone, one of the top existences among the chaos demon gods, had fallen. Naturally, the obliterating millstone could not be unscathed. Under the attack of the splitting heaven divine axe, he had also been severely injured. Although after countless years of cultivation, the obliterating millstone had been repaired a little. It had only been repaired to the level of a top Khanate ultimate treasure. It was barely on the same level as the Meluo Heaven Premier Pagoda. It was far from being comparable to its peak. If it was only at this level, Feng Zichen did not need to be afraid. However, that was not what he was worried about. Instead, it was, why was the obliterating millstone in the hands of the demon ancestor Rahu? It should be known that this treasure was the spirit treasure of the destruction demon god. It would only listen to his orders. There were only two possibilities for the demon ancestor Rahu to be able to control this treasure. First, the demon god of destruction had lent it to him. Second, he was the demon god of destruction. If it was the first possibility, it would be fine. But if it was the second possibility, it would be a big problem. The demon god of destruction was one of the giants in the chaos, second only to Pangu. He was also one of the few existences that could pose a threat to great Taoist priest Pangu. His realm was far beyond imagination. He had reached an incredible realm. It was very terrifying and could not be judged by common sense. If the demon ancestor Rahu was really the demon god of destruction, the celestial emperor's incarnation would definitely not be his opponent. This point had to be referred to Tao ancestor Hongjun. Tao ancestor Hongjun, who was also the primordial chaos Daoyuo Jingxian, had no resistance in front of great immortal Yang Mei, and the demon god of destruction was an existence that did not lose to great immortal Yang Mei. However, Feng Zichen rejected this possibility in his heart, because if the demon ancestor Rahu was really the demon god of destruction, the mere bottleneck of the limitless Tao realm would not be able to stop him. Moreover, it was even more impossible for them to win a battle with the demon ancestor Rahu. The strength that the demon ancestor Rahu displayed was very strong, but that was only relative to the chaos. If he was really the demon god of destruction, then the strength that he displayed was too weak. Therefore, the demon ancestor Rahu could not be the demon god of destruction. But Feng Zichen felt that it was impossible for the demon god of destruction to lend his spirit treasure to the demon ancestor Rahu. One had to know that the spirit treasure and its owner had a complementary relationship. With the help of the spirit treasure, cultivation would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. The demon god of destruction had just escaped from the seal and was in the critical period of recovering his strength. Why would he lend his treasure? This did not make sense. Unless, all of a sudden, Feng Zichen thought of a possibility. That was, the world-destroying millstone was snatched by the demon ancestor Rahu. As everyone knew, the demon ancestor Rahu was a great existence born from the resentment of the chaos demon god, and was naturally compatible with the chaos demon god. Was there a possibility that the demon ancestor Rahu was formed from part of the demon god of destruction's origin? After the demon god of destruction broke out of the seal, in order to recover his strength as soon as possible, he immediately wanted to possess the demon ancestor Rahu. Thinking about what kind of figure the demon ancestor Rahu was, his strength could be said to be the best in the chaos. Naturally, he was unwilling to be possessed, so he rose up to resist. The two of them fought just like that. It was precisely because of this reason that the demon ancestor Rahu was hindered. He could only watch helplessly as the demon sect suppressed Hao Tian and the others, unable to help. After that, perhaps the demon ancestor Rahu was more skilled, or perhaps something had happened to the demon god of destruction. In short, the demon ancestor Rahu protected his body and seized the chaos spirit treasure, the world-destroying millstone. This resulted in the scene in front of him. Of course, these were all Feng Zichen's guesses. There were many illogical points, and they might not be the truth. As for the real reason, probably only the demon ancestor Rahu and the demon god of destruction knew. However, no matter how one looked at it, the demon ancestor Rahu had a deep connection with the demon god of destruction. There might be a day when he would be possessed. Die. Just as Feng Zichen was in a daze, the demon ancestor Rahu's counterattack arrived. Boom. The destruction chi was vast and mighty, covering the entire void and drowning the Sky Emperor's avatar. Kill. Hao Tian formed a Dao seal with his hands and activated the Meluo Heavenly Premier Pagoda. Boundless creation chi descended to counter the destruction chi. On the other side, Leisha activated the Myriad God picture and produced the Myriad God Phantom. He imprinted it on the Meluo Heavenly Premier Pagoda to increase its power. Whoosh! As the creation chi and destruction chi clashed, Gaochen activated the Zichen sword and slashed out a heaven-splitting sword will. It tore through the void and attacked the demon ancestor Rahu. Boom! Boom! The two of them exchanged blows. They attacked each other wildly. Terrifying power spilled out in all directions, shaking the Tree of World. Chapter 590. But fortunately, the World Tree was a primordial chaos existence. In addition, after holding up the sky, it had received the favor of the world origins, and its strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Even if it was far from being as powerful as Rahu and the celestial Thearcha's avatar, it could still barely protect itself. Moreover, to protect the World Tree's safety, the Heavenly Tao had set up several layers of defense around it. With so many means added together, the World Tree might not be able to block Rahu's full-powered attack, but it was more than enough to block the aftershocks of the two's battle. Boom, boom, boom. As the two's battle became more intense, the world shook incessantly. Even the laws let out a mournful wail, as if they could not withstand the power, and were about to collapse. Mount Buzhou suppress. As the two exchanged blows, Feng Zichen seized the opportunity to activate the power of the Lesser Buzhou Mountain from the boundless void to suppress demon ancestor Luo Ho. Rumble. The phantom of Mount Buzhou descended from the sky, and Rahu, who was fighting against the Zhouxing painting and Meluo Heaven's primordial pagoda, was caught off guard and was hit head-on, falling into a momentary daze. In a battle between experts, there was no room for mistakes. That momentary daze was enough to break the balance between the two and determine the outcome. Bang! While Rahu was in a daze, the obliteration millstone could not help but pause. Its power weakened, and it could no longer resist the combined power of the two Khanate cardinal treasures, Zhouxing painting and Meluo Heaven's primordial pagoda, being struck down from the void. Without the obliteration millstone restraining it, the power of the two Khanate cardinal treasures erupted and blasted Rahu's body. Immediately after, Feng Zichen, Hao Yan, and the others knew that this was a rare opportunity. They all used their remarkable powers without holding back and blasted at Rahu. In an instant, the celestial Tharch avatar's 8 arms moved in unison, as all sorts of powerful supreme remarkable powers formed and blasted out from his hands. Terrifying Taoist rhymes almost drowned Rahu. Whoosh! Starlight was hazy, divine light was resplendent, Taoist light was mysterious, and immortal light was ethereal. 4 completely different powers erupted at the same time, transforming into inextinguishable Taoist marks that branded themselves on Rahu's body in an attempt to shatter and destroy his great Tao. Kill. After the first wave of divine powers was over, the second wave followed. They did not give fiend ancestor Rahu a chance to react. They wanted to take this opportunity to kill him. Top divine powers of the primordial universe and rare Khanate numinous treasures of the primordial universe blasted towards fiend ancestor Rahu wave after wave as though they were free. Scram! In the sea formed by the divine ability, demon ancestor Rahu let out a furious roar. Suddenly he raised a pitch-black banner and swept it around. Boundless fiendish aura erupted and swept the divine ability away. At the same time, the obliteration millstone flew out from the depths of the void and hovered above Rahu's head. It emanated boundless destructive aura that protected him within. The destructive aura and Khanate baleful aura erupted at the same time, forming a black ocean that destroyed everything. It blocked the celestial Thearcha's incarnation's divine powers and Dharma treasures, opening up a safe zone for fiend ancestor Rahu. At this moment, seeing that the situation had changed and that it was impossible to kill the demon ancestor Rahu, the celestial emperor's incarnation hurriedly retreated, creating a sufficient reaction distance and waiting for the situation to change. When everything calmed down and the void returned to normal, Fiend ancestor Raha's figure gradually appeared. Wretched. Wretched to the extreme. At this moment, Fiend ancestor Raha's appearance was indeed a little wretched compared to his previous domineering appearance. The Taoist robe on his body had been completely shattered by the Celestial Emperor's incarnation's attacks. It hung on his body in wisps, revealing his cracked body. Fiend ancestor Rahu now looked like broken porcelain that was barely glued together. His body was full of cracks, as though he would shatter at the slightest touch. That's right. Under the frenzied attacks of the Celestial Emperor's incarnation, Fiend ancestor Rahu's supreme demonic body that had been polished for hundreds of millions of years was almost completely destroyed. Drip, drip, drops of dark red blood dripped down from the cracks on his body, dyeing the void red. However, no phenomenon formed. Just like mortal blood, it was clear that all the demonic nature had been wiped out. Boom. A pitch-black demonic light rose from Fiend ancestor Raha's body as he attempted to heal his wounds. But there was no doubt that he failed. Every time Demonshine was about to heal his wounds, there would be 4 strange forces that would appear around his wounds, hindering him from recovering. Those were the Tao injuries that Feng Zichen, Hao Tian, and the other 3 had left on Fiend ancestor Raha's body. The injuries were branded on the Great Tao. If they were not removed in time, not only would it affect one's strength, but it would also constantly erode the Great Tao until it completely disintegrated. Cough cough. The juniors nowadays are really amazing. Fiend ancestor Rahu coughed a few times and said in an inexplicable tone. After the test just now, he had realized that his Tao injuries could not be healed in a short period of time. Therefore, Fiend ancestor Rahu no longer tried to heal his injuries. Instead, he used a secret technique to temporarily suppress his injuries to maintain his peak combat strength. The timing was not right. If it were in normal times, Fiend ancestor Rahu would have been able to recover from his injuries after tens of thousands of years in seclusion. Unfortunately, he did not have time to recover from his injuries now. This was because Feng Zichen, Hao Tian, and the other 3 would never give him time to recover from his injuries. Although the injuries caused by the Celestial Emperor's incarnation were not fatal, the impact was great. It was enough to cause his strength to fall to about 70% of his original strength. After losing 30% of his strength, no matter how confident Fiend ancestor Rahu was, he did not feel that he could defeat the Celestial Emperor's incarnation. TSK. Another Khanate cardinal treasure. Fiend ancestor, you are really rich. Looking at the long banner in Fiend ancestor Rahu's hand, Feng Zichen could not help but be tongue-tied. Feng Zichen did not recognize the origin of the long banner, but Feng Zichen could still feel the aura on his body. It was definitely a Khanate cardinal treasure. Moreover, the power of visualization could sweep away the Zhoxing painting and the Miluotian primeval pagoda in one fell swoop. Its grade would not be low. Even if it was not as good as the world-destroying millstone, it was not far away. The foundation of the demon sect is really deep. At this time, even Hao Tian, who was used to seeing treasures in the Purple Cloud Palace, could not help but sigh. The world-destroying millstone, the unknown long banner, the 4 immortal slaying swords that had been taken away by Tao ancestor Hongjun, and the god-slaying spear that they had sent into the Purple Cloud Palace to suppress. Fiend ancestor Rahu already had 4 Khanate cardinal treasures. This level of wealth had far surpassed Tao ancestor Hongjun. Note: before the outbreak of the war between Taoists and demons, Tao ancestor Hongjun was indeed not as rich as Fiend ancestor Rahu. In the beginning, the Taiji painting did not belong to him. Moreover, this was only the number of Khanate cardinal treasures that Fiend ancestor Rahu had exposed on the surface. Who knew if he had other Khanate cardinal treasures hidden in the dark? However, Fiend ancestor, although you have many cardinal treasures, you are ultimately only one person. And we. Behind us is the entire primordial world. Even if you are rich, can you be richer than the entire primordial world? Although he was shocked by Fiend ancestor Rahu's wealth, Feng Zichen was not afraid. Just as he had said, behind him stood the entire primordial world. Slaying fiends was the righteousness of heaven and earth. And in front of the righteousness, all living beings of the primordial world had to do their part. Therefore Feng Zichen moved. He controlled the celestial emperor's incarnation and bowed slightly to the heavens and earth. He said in a clear voice, "Poor way of heaven and earth, today, I beg all my fellow Taoists to help us kill the fiend ancestor." His voice was so loud that it spread throughout the primordial world. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the primordial world shook. One after another, connate numinous treasures tore through the air. There were thousands of them, forming a vast torrent of Dharma treasures, quietly lying in front of the celestial emperor's incarnation. The celestial emperor's words moved in all directions. These connate numinous treasures were all connate numinous treasures that did not have owners yet. They usually hid in various parts of the primordial world, and could not be found at all. They would only appear when the mandate of heaven descended, or when their owners were born, or perhaps, they would hide forever until the immeasurable calamity came. But now, in response to the call of the celestial emperor's incarnation, they came out of their hiding places and came in front of Feng Zichen and the others to do their part to kill the fiend. The world obeyed once the order was issued. This power was the real power of the celestial emperor, worthy of his identity as the supreme ruler of the primordial world. Thousands of connate numinous treasures gathered in one place. Such a spectacular scene could only be compared to the treasure-snatching rock before the treasure was divided. Buzz, buzz, buzz as the Dharma treasures trembled. Various colors of light reflected on each other, so dazzling that people could not open their eyes. At the same time, a terrifying aura filled the air, shaking the past, present, and future. It even had the tendency to be on par with the connate cardinal treasures. This was, a quantitative change led to a qualitative change. The combined power of thousands of connate numinous treasures was definitely enough to compete with the connate cardinal treasures in terms of power, or even surpass them. And just as the ownerless connate numinous treasures gathered, the ownerless connate numinous treasures in the holy lands of the primordial world were also trembling. From time to time, it would bloom with brilliance, and from time to time, it would return to its original state. Looking at his actions, he seemed to be hesitating. He did not know if he should follow the celestial emperor's orders and go to the world tree to fight the demon ancestor Rahu. In the end, without the suppression of its master, the sky emperor's commanding power had gained the upper hand. The famous connate spiritual treasures flew into the sky and joined the flood of magical treasures. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Accompanied by a series of whooshing sounds, more connate spiritual treasures gathered, causing the power of the artifact torrent to grow stronger. It almost surpassed the connate cardinal treasures. Hiss! What a good move! Upon seeing this scene, even fiend ancestor Rahu was somewhat alarmed. He did not dare allow this to continue. At that moment, he raised his connate cardinal treasure, the world-destroying millstone, and blasted it directly at the torrent of Dharma treasures in an attempt to destroy it. However, just as the world-exterminating millstone was about to move, a supreme emperor's seal surrounded by a brilliant aura broke through the air and pressed down on its head. What is the origin of this treasure? Why does it make me so afraid? Fiend ancestor Rahu felt a long-lost fear from this emperor's seal. It caused his entire body to tremble. That fear originated from his bloodline. It seemed to be engraved in the depths of his bloodline, and passed down from generation to generation. Even if fiend ancestor Rahu wanted to suppress it, he did not know where to start. Driven by fear, fiend ancestor Rahu's world-exterminating millstone, which was supposed to attack the torrent of Dharma treasures, suddenly turned and blasted at the emperor's seal. Bang! The two treasures collided violently. However, the result was that the emperor's seal that terrified fiend ancestor Rahu was blasted far away. This result made fiend ancestor Rahu heave a long sigh of relief. At the same time, he was greatly puzzled. This treasure was not very powerful. Why did it make him so afraid that he almost could not control himself? With doubts in his heart, fiend ancestor Rahu reached out and grabbed at the emperor's seal that had been blasted away. However, although he was fast, someone was faster than him. Before fiend ancestor Rahu made his move, the arms of the celestial emperor's avatar, which belonged to the Gauchan, had already reached out and grabbed at the emperor's seal. "You're courting death." Seeing this, fiend ancestor Rahu was furious. He summoned the world-exterminating millstone and blasted it at the huge hand that was grabbing at the Emperor's seal. Haha. The Gauchan merely shook his head and chuckled in response to Fiend Ancestor Rahu's action. He had a mocking expression on his face. Then the huge hand that was grabbing at the Emperor's seal suddenly paused. His 5 fingers repeatedly formed a mysterious seal. Buzz. 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 The moment the seal was formed, the Emperor's seal immediately reacted and released endless Taoist rhymes. Amidst the endless Taoist rhymes, a huge finger was faintly discernible. Like a pillar that supported the heavens, it blasted at the world-exterminating millstone. Bang! As soon as they came into contact, the obliteration millstone, which had the upper hand previously, was pushed into the depths of the void by the huge finger without any resistance. It lay there quietly, and the spiritual light around it had dimmed a little. Obviously, it had suffered some injuries. As for Fiend Ancestor Rahu, his performance was even worse. After the huge finger appeared, it was as if he had seen an extremely terrifying existence. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat, and his body trembled like a sieve. He no longer had the demeanor of an unparalleled expert. However, there was not the slightest trace of fear on his face. Instead, there was a faint look of disapproval. To be honest, the power displayed by the huge finger was not enough to scare Fiend Ancestor Rahu at all. In fact, he did not feel that there was anything to be afraid of about the huge finger before him. As for why he was acting so unbearably, it was because of his bloodline. The fear that originated from the depths of his bloodline caused Fiend Ancestor Rahu's body to tremble uncontrollably. However, in his heart, he did not feel any fear at all. Therefore, this caused Fiend Ancestor Rahu's body to tremble in fear. However, there was a look of disapproval on his face. Damn it! The influence of the Chaos Demon Gods on their descendants is simply too great. After suppressing the fear in his bloodline, Fiend Ancestor Rahu could not help but complain in a low voice. From the moment he saw the huge finger, he understood why he was so afraid of the Emperor's seal. Because from the mighty and vast aura, Fiend Ancestor Rahu knew the origin of the finger, Panga's finger. Therefore, he, who had inherited the bloodline of the Chaos Demon Gods, was so afraid. Chapter 591. As the saying went, there were gains and losses. Although the descendants of the Chaos Demon God were naturally stronger than the Khanate God Fiends, it was also because of this reason that they were deeply influenced by the Chaos Demon God, and could not resist them. When they died, the Chaos Demon God's fear of Pangu had already been rooted in the depths of their bloodline. This also led to their bloodline descendants who were deeply influenced by them also inheriting their fear of Pangu. Demon Ancestor Rahu was a descendant of the Chaos Demon God, and was the most outstanding existence among them. Therefore, he was the most affected by the Chaos Demon God and feared Pangu the most. Although the descendants of the Chaos Demon God had obtained the most powerful strength, they had lost even more, and it was almost impossible for them to escape the control of the Chaos Demon God. When the Khanate God Fiends were born, although they were far from as powerful as the descendants of the Chaos Demon God, their Tao hearts were unaffected, and they had a brighter future. It was a trade-off. No one could tell who had gained the upper hand. Just like now, facing the human Tao imperial seal formed by Panga's finger, Demon Ancestor Rahu was almost unable to control himself in fear. This was one of the disadvantages of being a descendant of the Chaos Demon God. That's right, the imperial seal that broke through the air was the human Tao supreme treasure that Feng Zichen had given to Fuxi. The human Tao imperial seal. Your Majesty, I'll return the imperial seal to you to help you clear the demonic aura. At this moment, Fuxi's faintly discernible voice was heard. Of course, he himself did not come. Fuxi still had this bit of self-awareness. With the support of the mandate of heaven, Fuxi could erupt with power comparable to primordial chaos Dao Yuo Jingxian. But this kind of power, in normal times, could naturally sweep through the primordial world. But in this place, it seemed a little inadequate. The difference was too great. If Fuxi came here personally, he would definitely die even with the protection of the human Tao imperial seal. This could be seen from the outcome when he took out the human Tao Imperial Seal and blasted it at demon ancestor Rahu. In Fushi's hands, the human Tao Imperial Seal was easily sent flying by the obliteration millstone. In the hands of the celestial emperor's incarnation, the obliteration millstone was damaged. The difference between them was obvious. Moreover, Fushi didn't even participate in the battle between the incarnations of the sages and the chaotic demonic celestial in the void. Now, it could be said that he had a great responsibility, bearing the heavy responsibility of protecting the primordial world. Dozens of powerful primordial chaos existences fought in the primordial world. It was impossible to say that it did not affect the primordial world and all living beings. In a battle of this level, just a wisp of aftershock from the exchange of blows was enough to kill a powerful figure in the early stage of Sage to be. If they hit the wilderness, the consequences could be imagined. A light punishment would be to wipe out a large number of living beings, while a heavy punishment would be to wipe out an entire region. Therefore, at this moment, someone needed to protect the primordial world, to prevent all living beings from being affected by the spreading aftershocks. As the ruler of all races, Fushi, who possessed formidable strength, was the most suitable candidate for this position. At that moment, Fushi was leading the experts of the 10,000 races to set up the primordial river formation and mobilize the power of heaven and earth in all directions to protect the living beings of the primordial world. With the combined power of the 10,000 races, Fushi was able to push the power of the primordial river formation to its limits. Its strength was probably comparable to the demon race's heavenly cycle star formation. Even if a primordial chaos expert came, it would be able to kill him. Using this formation to protect the primordial world might not be foolproof, but it could reduce the danger to the minimum. However, combining the power of the 10,000 races to form a formation was also a coincidence. This was the only time. In the future, it would probably be difficult for Fushi to replicate this situation. Rumble. After pushing the obliterating millstone into the depths of the void, Panga's finger did not stop moving. With a vast amount of power, it rumbled toward demon ancestor Rahu. Demon ancestor Rahu naturally did not dare to be careless. Ignoring the residual strength of Panga's finger, just its weight alone was enough to crush a primordial chaos expert. He had no choice but to deal with it carefully. Go. With a thought, demon ancestor Rahu called back the obliterating millstone that had been pushed into the depths of the void. With the power of the unknown banner in his hand, he blasted it toward the human Tao Emperor Seal. With the departure of the obliterating millstone and banner, demon ancestor Rahu was only left with a few top-grade connate numinous treasures. Upon seeing this, Feng Zichen, Haoyan and company naturally would not let go of this opportunity. They raised the Zhousing map and Miluotian primordial pagoda, as well as Lesser Mount Buzhou, and attacked Rahu together. Rumble. Lesser Mount Buzhou emitted an aura that suppressed the ages. It formed a special Tao domain around Rahu to suppress his strength and prevent him from using his full strength. Above the heavenly cycle stellar chart, there were galactic rivers and cosmic lights. They stacked on top of each other, forming a gigantic space-time Tao wheel. It released peerless space-time forces to delay fiend ancestor Rahu's actions and will. The Miluotian primordial pagoda spun slowly, drooping down boundless creation chi. It transformed into all sorts of mysterious existences that resembled gods, devils and artifacts, all of them blasted toward Rahu. At the same time, a massive suction force emitted from the bottom of the Miluotian primordial pagoda. It firmly held Rahu in place as it attempted to pull him into the pagoda. As for the top-grade connate numinous treasures around Rahu, they were completely suppressed by the full strength of the three supreme treasures. They could no longer display any of their miraculous powers. Kill. After the three supreme treasures attacked, the celestial Varch avatar conjured a torrent of Dharma treasures and charged at Rahu. Clang. 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 The connate numinous treasures slammed into Rahu's body. It was extremely rhythmic, but they failed to deal any damage to him. Who was Rahu? He was the founder of the fiendish Tao, the most outstanding descendant of the Chaos Fiend Celestial. Furthermore, he was a powerhouse of the primordial chaos body tempering Tao. His body was innately powerful, far exceeding that of most connate godfiends. He was not necessarily weaker than a newborn ancestral magus. Furthermore, he tempered his body with connate baneful aura day and night, painstakingly polishing it for countless years. He had long tempered his body into a flawless state. Its toughness was comparable to connate cardinal treasures, making it the #1 body in the primordial world. How could a mere connate numinous treasure break through such a powerful body? Even though Rahu's body had been torn apart by the celestial Dharch avatar, and was in a severely injured state, a connate numinous treasure was still a connate numinous treasure. Even in a damaged state, it was still a connate numinous treasure. It was not something that connate numinous treasures could break. Therefore, although the torrent of Dharma treasures could affect Rahu to a certain extent, it was not fatal. It posed no threat at all. In fact, it had even brought certain benefits to the Nyingma ancestor Rahu. Bam! Bam! Amidst the sounds of metal being hammered, ancestral fiend Rahu actually treated himself as a piece of metal. He used the flood of treasures as a hammer, and the suppression of the 3 supreme treasures as a furnace to refine his body. Bam! 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 Each sound was heavier than the last. It was as if a piece of divine iron or immortal gold was being hammered 1,000 times. With the collision of the connate numinous treasures, the Taoist rhymes they carried, as well as the Taoist rhymes emitted by the 3 supreme treasures, were hammered into Rahu's body to enhance his foundation and strengthen his body. Boom! 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 After the repeated collisions, demon ancestor Rahu's aura began to slowly grow. Even the Tao injury he had suffered earlier showed signs of recovery. Although this sort of growth was very slow, so much so that it was almost undetectable, it was indeed happening. Everything was developing in a bad direction. Yes, that's the feeling. A little stronger, a little stronger. Only in this way can I take that crucial step. The strength that had not increased for a long time began to slowly increase. That feeling made Rahu a little addicted. He had achieved his goal. This was the pressure he needed, the pressure that was enough for him to break through. He had not misjudged these juniors. They had really done it. If this strength could last for tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years, then Rahu the demon ancestor would have enough confidence to advance to the realm of Wuji Daluo Jinxian. But unfortunately, Feng Zichen obviously would not give him this opportunity. After sensing that the aura of Rahu the demon ancestor had begun to slowly increase, Feng Zichen realized that something was wrong. Although he had not experienced this situation personally, he was still very familiar with it. In his previous life, he had seen many similar situations in novels. The villain intended to refine the protagonist to death, but he did not expect the protagonist to use his strength to transform. In the end, not only did the villain not achieve his goal, but the protagonist's strength increased greatly, and he killed him instead. At that time, Feng Zichen's blood was boiling as he watched. His emotions were stirred and he wished he could replace him. If it were him, what would he do? After coming to the primordial world, he had also fantasized about such a situation happening, but he had never had the chance to encounter it. He did not expect that not only would he encounter it today, but he would also become the villain. This kind of experience was not very wonderful. No one would be happy to become a stepping stone on someone else's path to success. Feng Zichen was naturally no exception. With the fate of so many villains in front of him, how could Feng Zichen not learn from the experience and leave a chance for Rahu the demon ancestor to break through? Therefore, he made a move. He controlled the Celestial Emperor's incarnation to directly attack Rahu the demon ancestor, wanting to engage in close combat with him. Kill. With a thought, Feng Zichen controlled the Celestial Emperor's incarnation and suddenly opened his mouth to swallow, swallowing all the magical treasures into his body. Great array of 10,000 treasures, open. After swallowing the magical treasures, Feng Zichen immediately mobilized all his strength and arranged those innate spirit treasures according to a mysterious trajectory to form a peerless array, so that their strength could be connected together. Boom. The moment the array was formed, the power of thousands of innate spirit treasures became a whole in the blink of an eye, erupting with a bright brilliance. Endless treasure light bloomed from the body of the celestial emperor's incarnation, making him look more and more majestic. At the same time, his strength was soaring. His originally somewhat illusory body also solidified in an instant and had a texture. Its hardness was not inferior to that of innate spirit treasures. It was even better than the physical body of Rahu the demon ancestor. This was the power of the great array of 10,000 treasures. It integrated the power of the innate spirit treasures that formed the array into a whole, so that they could erupt with power that was far beyond their own grade. To put it simply, the function of this array was to maximize the characteristic of quantitative change, leading to qualitative change. This array was created by Sect Master Tongtian and improved by Feng Zichen. In the Untainted Land, the person who had the most innate spirit treasures was none other than Sect Master Tongtian. Back then, he had taken away many innate spirit treasures from the treasure-snatching rock with the help of the 4 immortal killing swords. As a sage, the innate spirit treasures were not very useful to him. Therefore, after much thought, Sect Master Tongtian created the great array of 10,000 treasures in order to maximize the effect of the innate spirit treasures in his hands. Later, after Feng Zichen obtained this array through Xianqing, he thought of the future glory of the endless starry sky, and the birth of a large number of innate spirit treasures. With the help of the power of Hongmeng Daozhong, he improved this array for a rainy day. However, he did not expect that before the birth of the innate spirit treasures in the endless starry sky, he would use it in such a situation. The affairs of the world were really unpredictable. You're courting death. With the disappearance of the torrent of magic treasures, Rahu the demon ancestor's plan to refine his body failed, and his strength stopped increasing. Therefore, Rahu the demon ancestor was extremely angry. He had finally seen the hope of a breakthrough that he had been looking forward to for a long time, but it was gone in the blink of an eye. Between the ups and downs, even Rahu the demon ancestor lost control of his state of mind. As the saying goes, the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. It could be used on anyone. Seeing the celestial emperor's avatar charging over, Rahu the demon ancestor rushed forward, wanting to vent all the anger in his heart on him. However, as soon as they started fighting, Rahu the demon ancestor discovered a surprising result. He was not the opponent's match at all. This was not the difference in strength, but the result of him being suppressed by his opponent. Thinking of this, Rahu the demon ancestor suddenly raised his head and looked at the 3 treasures floating beside him: Zhoxing Painting, Miluo Heaven Primordial Pagoda, and Little Mount Buzhou. It was the combination of these 3 treasures that limited Rahu the demon ancestor's strength to 80%. Moreover, this was not the most troublesome thing. The most troublesome thing was that the speed of time and space that belonged to Rahu the demon ancestor was about 10 times slower than that of the celestial emperor's avatar. In other words, Rahu the demon ancestor could only punch once in the time it took for the celestial emperor's avatar to punch 10 times. This difference of 10 times was undoubtedly fatal to Rahu the demon ancestor, who was evenly matched with the celestial emperor's avatar. This resulted in the celestial emperor's avatar completely suppressing Rahu the demon ancestor. Not long after, Rahu the demon ancestor's old injuries were not healed, but new ones were added to his body. During this time, Rahu the demon ancestor had also attempted to summon back the obliterating millstone and the long banner to break the suppression of the 3 treasures. However, he was surprised that the battle between the 2 treasures and the human Tao Emperor's seal was not optimistic. Chapter 592. The World-Destroying Millstone and the Long Banner, the 2 connate cardinal treasures, worked together to barely suppress the human Tao Emperor seal. They barely had the upper hand. It was probably impossible for them to return to help. Otherwise, once these 2 connate cardinal treasures were summoned, demon ancestor Rahu's situation would be even worse. In fact, simply speaking, the power of the human Tao Emperor seal was strong enough, but it was still impossible for him to fight against 2 connate cardinal treasures alone. The reason why he could fight against 2 top connate cardinal treasures and not be at a disadvantage was that Feng Zichen had secretly activated the power of the Chaos Bead. No matter what, the Chaos Bead was once a supreme chaos treasure. Even though it had suffered a calamity and its grade had fallen to a connate cardinal treasure, its essence had not changed. Just like the prodigies among cultivators who had invincible strength among those of the same realm, the Chaos Bead was one of the best among the connate cardinal treasures. It might be a little difficult to completely suppress two top connate cardinal treasures, but it was still easy to tie down all their energy. The defeat of the world-destroying millstone and the long banner made demon ancestor Rahu's heart slowly sink. He had miscalculated. The other party's strength had indeed met his expectations and could give him enough pressure to break through. However, demon ancestor Rahu clearly did not expect that one day he would be completely suppressed by someone with magic treasures. It was the biggest joke in the world. If it was in the past, someone would say that they could defeat demon ancestor Rahu in terms of magic treasures. Demon ancestor Rahu would definitely scoff. His strength was not only in terms of strength, but also in terms of magic treasures. He, who had inherited the legacy of the Chaos Fiend God, was almost the richest existence in the primordial world. The numinous treasures he possessed were beyond the imagination of the world. But today, demon ancestor Rahu's pride was gone. He was suppressed by someone with a magic treasure. In order to deal with him, the other party had used 4 connate cardinal treasures and thousands of connate numinous treasures. With the power of the magic treasure, they had directly beaten him to a pulp. Damn Hongjun! Looking at the 3 connate cardinal treasures that faintly surrounded him, demon ancestor Rahu could not help but curse Dao ancestor Hongjun in his heart. If Dao ancestor Hongjun hadn't taken away his 4 immortal slaying swords and suppressed his god-slaying spear, causing him to lose 2 extremely powerful innate supreme treasures, then today, how could he be in such a sorry state? The outcome of the battle was still unknown. Amidst his rage, Rahu's attacks turned even more frenzied. Although based on the current situation, it was only a matter of time before he was defeated. However, in Rahu's heart, there was still a faint hope. A hope of turning defeat into victory. Between life and death, there was great terror, but there was also great opportunity. The current Celestial Emperor Avatar was already capable of bringing fatal danger to Rahu. Thus, the pressure that the demon ancestor, Rahu, felt from fighting him was unprecedented. And this was the motivation for his breakthrough. If Fiend Ancestor Rahu could use this battle as an opportunity to pry into the mysteries of the limitless Tao realm, he would be able to do so. Then he might have a chance to turn defeat into victory. However, this method was extremely dangerous. It was like walking on a tightrope at the edge of a cliff. It was equivalent to lingering between life and death. The slightest carelessness could put one's life in danger. However, at this moment, Rahu could no longer care so much. In order to break through, it was worth paying a price. Therefore, he decided to take a gamble. In any case, with his strength, he wouldn't really die. Why wouldn't he dare to take a gamble? Having decided to go all out, Fiend Ancestor Rahu's every move carried with it a fearless aura. A majestic will surged out, shaking the Tao domain formed by the 3 connate cardinal treasures to suppress him, causing it to loosen up slightly. However, although Rahu's moves were ferocious, Feng Zichen, Hao Tian, and the other 3's moves were even more ferocious. In fact, there was even a hint of a tragic aura. That was a completely suicidal way of fighting. Exchanging injuries for injuries was just an ordinary method. As the 2 of them exchanged blows, blood and broken bones splattered out and scattered on the primordial land. They either formed lakes or turned into mountains. Endless divinity spread out and soaked into the mountains and rivers. Who knew how many shocking opportunities it would bring to this place? What's more, who knew how many strange creatures would be born from this boundless fortune? Rumble. The battle became more and more intense. Countless Tao patterns spread out. Endless divine light bloomed, and fragments of the rules of heaven and earth danced in it. All kinds of shocking phenomena appeared one after another, causing the battlefield to be completely invisible. It was a vast expanse. If they weren't forced to the point of no choice, Feng Zichen, Hao Tian, and the other 3 wouldn't be so desperate. The conditions really didn't allow them to slack off. One had to know that. They were different from Rahu the demon ancestor. Rahu the demon ancestor's strength was cultivated bit by bit. It was real. And the strength they had now was forcefully raised with the help of their own karmic rank. It was an external force and was illusory. It was completely incomparable to the strength that Rahu the demon ancestor had painstakingly cultivated. At the very least, their strength couldn't last long. There was a time limit. After all, they weren't the real celestial emperors and couldn't maintain the celestial emperor's incarnation. If Feng Zichen, Hao Tian, and the other three couldn't get rid of Rahu the demon ancestor before the celestial emperor's incarnation disappeared, then what awaited them wouldn't be a good ending. Moreover, apart from the restrictions of the celestial emperor's incarnation, there was another urgent matter that forced Feng Zichen and the others to go all out. That was, soon, the Meluo Heaven's primordial pagoda would disappear and return to the future. After all, it was a Khanate treasure from the future. Even if it was forcefully left in the present world by the celestial emperor's incarnation with a supreme divine ability, the Meluo Heaven's primordial pagoda still couldn't stay for a long time. Otherwise, the Meluo Heaven's primordial pagoda would definitely be devoured by the river of spacetime and fall into an unknown spacetime, disappearing forever. Therefore, before the backlash of the river of spacetime arrived, the Meluo Heaven's primordial pagoda was bound to return to the spacetime that belonged to him. It was also the reason why the Earth Empress was missing among the 5 emperors that formed the Celestial Emperor's incarnation. As a result, the Celestial Emperor's incarnation was incomplete and couldn't unleash its invincible power. Otherwise, with the strength of the complete Celestial Emperor's incarnation, it could easily suppress the backlash of the river of spacetime, thus allowing the Meluo Heaven's primordial pagoda to stay in the present world for a long time. Your Majesties, Poor Wei is here to help you. Just as the Celestial Emperor's incarnation was locked in battle with fiend ancestor Rahu, an ethereal Tao voice suddenly came from afar. Then in the void, the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginnings incarnation, who was fighting with the Chaos Fiend Celestial, suddenly shook off his opponent and took the time to throw a golden treasure flag in the direction of the Celestial Emperor's incarnation. The flag was more than 20 feet long and was dark yellow in color. It emitted light all over, and as the flag fluttered, golden lotuses were faintly discernible, creating a boundless atmosphere. This treasure was the center of the Heaven and Earth 5-element flags, the Wutu apricot yellow flag. It was the top Khanate numinous treasure of the primordial world. Your Majesty, catch. Just as the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning took out the central Wutu apricot yellow flag, Saint Jie Yin's incarnation also took action. A green treasure flag flew out from his head and followed closely behind the Wutu apricot yellow flag, flying towards the Celestial Emperor's incarnation, the Eastern Green Treasure Lotus flag of the Khanate 5-element flags. At the same time, above the World Tree, where the 33 heavens were, in a place surrounded by a sacred aura. After seeing the Wutu apricot yellow flag and the Green Treasure Lotus flag appear one after another, a graceful and elegant woman suddenly shot a beam of clear light downward. The Western White Cloud Boundary flag of the Khanate 5-element flags of the Heaven and Earth. And that woman was the current Heavenly Empress, the Jade Lake Empress. Under Shuyang Mountain, city of the human race, Eong Clan Xuandu, who was suppressing the nearby earth veins, suddenly sensed something and took out the supreme-grade Khanate spiritual treasure Southern Floating Flame flag. Whoosh! As soon as the floating flame flag appeared, it sensed a calling from the unseen world, and directly flew towards the Celestial Emperor's incarnation to join the other 3 Khanate 5-element flags of the Heaven and Earth. At this point, 4 of the Khanate 5-element flags of the Heaven and Earth had gathered, and the missing Northern Xianyuan water control flag was now in the Nether Realm, in the hands of the Lord of the Blood Sea, Nether River Patriarch. Good, good, good. After forcing fiend ancestor Rahu back again, the Celestial Emperor's incarnation didn't go forward. Instead, he looked at the 4 Khanate 5-element flags of the Heaven and Earth that suddenly appeared beside him with great joy. After the Chaos Absolute Treasure 36 Chaos Green Lotus shattered, Its lotus leaves fell into the wilderness and turned into a connate cardinal treasure, the connate 5-element flags. After that, it felt like the beginning of the wilderness and the world wasn't stable yet. The connate 5-element flags split into 5 smaller flags and fell into the 4 corners of the world, and the earth to suppress the 5 elements and stabilize the world. And these 5 smaller flags were the origin of the connate 5-element flags of the 5 elements. In other words, when the 5 flags were combined, the connate 5-element flags of the connate 5 elements would reappear, a top-grade connate merit cardinal treasure. Haha. With the connate 5-element flags of the 5 elements, why worry about not killing fiend ancestor Rahu? Laughing loudly, the celestial emperor's incarnation waved his hand and took out 4 connate 5-element flags of the 5 elements, surrounding fiend ancestor Rahu. If 5 connate 5-element flags of the 5 elements were gathered, I might be a little wary. But if 4 connate 5-element flags of the 5 elements are enough to suppress me. Junior, are you teasing me? Fiend ancestor Rahu was extremely nervous when he saw the connate 5-element flags flying over one after another. Just as he had said, if the connate 5-element flags of the 5 elements were gathered, he would definitely not be able to withstand them in his current situation. He would definitely be suppressed. However, when he saw that there were only 4 connate 5-element flags flying over, fiend ancestor Rahu heaved a long sigh of relief and completely relaxed. Although there was only one difference between 4 connate 5-element flags and 5 connate 5-element flags of the 5 elements, the meaning they represented was worlds apart. With the 5 connate 5-element flags of the 5 elements gathered, they could immediately form a connate cardinal treasure, the connate 5-element flags of the 5 elements. They could then set up a top-grade connate array of the primordial world, the connate 5-element array of the 5 elements. With the help of this, the celestial emperor's incarnation would definitely be stronger. And fiend ancestor Rahu, who was already at a disadvantage, would be at an even greater disadvantage. He would probably be directly suppressed. But if there were only 4 5-element flags, they would only be for supreme-grade connate numinous treasures. Although it was still somewhat troublesome for fiend ancestor Rahu, it wasn't fatal. It was within his tolerance. For soon it won't be. Fengzichen Hao Tian and the others smiled strangely at fiend ancestor Rahu. They all spoke at the same time. Where is the northern Xianyuan water control flag? Hurry up and return to your position. As soon as they finished speaking, all the Daos in the world trembled and intertwined with an inexplicable power that swept across the heavens and the earth, covering the entire wilderness. Buzz 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 at the same time, in the Nether realm. Nether River Patriarch, who was confronting the Chaos Demon God, suddenly felt the Xianyuan water control flag in his hand tremble uncontrollably, as if it was about to slip out of his hand. What's going on? Shocked, Nether River Patriarch subconsciously tightened his grip on the Xianyuan water control flag in his hand, trying to suppress his agitation. However, the power was strange and shockingly powerful. Even if Nether River Patriarch used all his strength, he gradually showed signs of being unable to suppress it. And just as Nether River Patriarch was gradually unable to hold on, and was about to use the 12th grade Red Lotus of Hellfire to forcibly suppress the Xianyuan water control flag, the loud voice of the Celestial Emperor's incarnation exploded in his ears like thunder, allowing him to understand the cause and effect. Where is the northern Xianyuan water control flag? Hurry up and return to your position. Hurry up and return to your position. Hurry up and return to your position. Return to your position. Return to your position. Nether River Patriarch thought for a moment, and let go of his left hand that was holding the Xianyuan water control flag, allowing it to break and leave. Slaying demons was a righteous cause. Nether River Patriarch had no reason to refuse. Moreover, this was just borrowing the treasure, not that he would not return it. If he borrowed it, he would get 4 favors for free. If he did not lend it, he would definitely offend more than half of the primordial world's powerful figures. The weight of this, Nether River Patriarch could not understand and knew how to choose. Whoosh! The northern Xianyuan water control flag broke through the realm and hovered beside the Celestial Emperor's incarnation. What did it mean to have the heavenly law in one's mouth? What did it mean to have the law in one's words? That was it. The celestial emperor was the supreme ruler of the primordial world. His power was endless and almost omnipotent. His will was the will of heaven and earth. Even the Taos of heaven and earth had to obey him, let alone everything else. Any existence that dared to go against his will was undoubtedly defying the heavens, and would be hated by the Taos of heaven and earth. From then on, his luck would plummet and he would be unlucky. Therefore, the celestial emperor could summon the Xianyuan water control flag from Nether River Patriarch's hands with a single word. Of course, commanding the celestial emperor's myriad Tao. That was the ability of a complete celestial emperor. Now the celestial emperor's incarnation that was summoned by Feng Zichen, Haoyan, and the others was only an incomplete one. Its ability was greatly reduced. The reason why he could summon the northern Xianyuan water control flag from Nether River Patriarch's hands was that he already had 4 innate 5-element flags in his hands. It was precisely because of the special connection between the 5 innate 5-element flags that he could summon the northern Xianyuan water control flag that the Nether River Patriarch could not suppress and almost let go of. Demon Ancestor. Let the juniors send you on your last journey. After taking a deep look at Demon Ancestor Rahu, the Celestial Emperor's incarnation raised the northern Xianyuan water control flag. Chapter 593. Innate 5 Elements Flags Suppress. As soon as he finished speaking, the Northern Mystic Essence Water Control flag separated from the Celestial Emperor's avatar and landed on the back of Demon Ancestor Rahu, resonating with the other 4 innate 5 elements flags from afar. Rumble. The 5 innate 5 elements flags gathered, producing a boundless phenomenon. A resplendent brilliance erupted. It was 5-colored and blotted out the sky. And within the 5-colored brilliance, boundless 5 elements Tao runes spread out, almost condensing into substance, forming a special Tao domain that sealed Demon Ancestor Rahu within. Whoosh! 5 rays of light soared into the sky and then condensed into one in an instant. At this point, the 5 innate 5 elements flags fused into one, forming a 5-colored flag. Innate Merit Cardinal Treasure Innate 5 Elements Flags. Boom! Boundless 5 elements chi fell from the innate 5 elements flags, evolving into the mysteries of the universe. In the blink of an eye, the innate 5 elements Tao domain was filled, and Demon Ancestor Rahu, who was in the 5 elements Tao domain, was affected by this. He felt that his body suddenly became countless times heavier, as if he was carrying 100,000 divine mountains, and his movements became increasingly slower. His incomparably straight waist was gradually bent down from the pressure. Haha. Is that all? That really disappoints me. I'm afraid it's far from enough to suppress me with such means. Seeing that Demon Ancestor Rahu was gradually bent down, he suddenly laughed loudly. Then, he straightened his back again and charged towards the Celestial Emperor's avatar while enduring the immense pressure. Demon Ancestor Rahu was very excited. Very excited. Under the pressure of the innate 5 elements flags, he actually saw the hope of breaking through again. Faintly. He had a feeling. If he could break the shackles on his body and win this battle, then. He would then. The path of advancing to the limitless Daoyuo Jingxian would be completely opened, and there would be no more obstacles on the path. It was with the support of this belief that Demon Ancestor Rahu rekindled his hope. He erupted with all his strength and charged towards the Celestial Emperor's avatar, while resisting the suppression of the 4 innate cardinal treasures. All the hardships now were resources for advancing to the limitless Daoyuo Jingxian. At this moment, Demon Ancestor Rahu had the belief of invincibility. He firmly believed that he could win. However, it was obvious that after obtaining the innate 5 elements flag, Feng Zichen, Haoyan, and the others were much more confident than Rahu. He already felt that this battle could finally come to an end. Aha! Fiend Ancestor must be joking. Who are you? He was once invincible in the great desolate world, an existence that suppressed an entire era. How could we possibly hope to suppress you with such a simple method? So, we have prepared another surprise for you. Celestial Thearch's avatar said with a smile as he dodged fiend ancestor Raha's attack despite the immense pressure. Just as they said. Feng Zichen, Hao Yan, and the others had never thought that they could completely suppress the fiend ancestor Rahu with an additional Khanate cardinal treasure. That was unrealistic and impossible. After all, it was born from the resentment of the chaos fiend god. How could the demon ancestor Rahu, who was once invincible in the untainted land, be suppressed so easily? In that case, how could he live up to his name? What? Hearing this, demon ancestor Rahu could not help but be shocked. Right now he was already at his limit. If Feng Zichen and the others really had other methods that they had not used, then he would really fail miserably and be defeated by a group of juniors. Just as demon ancestor Rahu was feeling bewildered, the celestial Thearch's avatar moved. Then he formed a series of hand seals and pointed at the innate 5 elements flag, shouting suddenly, Khanate 5 elements formation, rise. A ball of resplendent 5-colored brilliance suddenly bloomed from the Khanate 5 elements flag, turning into boundless Tao runes that enveloped demon ancestor Rahu. At the same time, the world suddenly buzzed. Almost all of the origin chi of the 5 elements began to move restlessly, as if they had gone crazy and were gathering toward this place. Rumble. Suddenly, 5-colored divine lights descended from the horizon, while a myriad of talisman markings that contained boundless fortune descended from the sky. They were extremely profound, and they fell into the innate 5-element flags. That was the foundation of the great desolate world, the Khanate 5 elements Tao. The moment the Khanate 5 elements formation was activated, the Khanate 5 elements Tao manifested and enhanced it. In an instant, in the area where demon ancestor Rahu was, the 5 directions were reversed, and the 5 elements were in chaos. East Africa, West Africa, North Africa. It evolved into a scene of chaos and loneliness before the world was formed. Dong. The pressure on demon ancestor Raha's body suddenly increased, causing his advancing footsteps to suddenly stop, unable to move any further. Huff huff, Junior. You're not bad. But this little bit of strength is far from enough to defeat me. Break for me. Ah. In the Khanate 5 elements formation, demon ancestor Rahu was first suppressed by the huge pressure and stopped in his tracks. But then, he roared and stimulated his potential, increasing his strength at all costs. Boom. Raging demonic flames suddenly rose from demon ancestor Raha's body. Those were the flames produced when the Khanate origin was burning, igniting his own origin. This meant that demon ancestor Rahu was going all out. Rumble. A terrifying aura rose from demon ancestor Raha's body, setting off a huge storm. It swept away the Khanate 5 elements energy that gathered on his body, causing it to be in a mess. Even the Khanate 5 elements formation, and the 3 Khanate cardinal treasures were on the verge of collapse under the impact of demon ancestor Raha's sudden increase in aura, as if they were about to fly out. If the Celestial Emperor's incarnation had not stepped forward at the critical moment to help the 4 Khanate cardinal treasures, and the formation suppressed demon ancestor Rahu, demon ancestor Rahu would have escaped from the impact of the aura. But even so, facing demon ancestor Rahu, who had ignited his origin and whose strength had soared, the suppression of the 4 Khanate cardinal treasures was greatly reduced. Its power was less than 60% of its original power. How troublesome. Looking at demon ancestor Rahu who had ignited his origin, Feng Zichen had mixed feelings. If they followed the normal process at this moment, they should also ignite their origin and accompany demon ancestor Rahu to see who could not hold on first. Unfortunately, they could not, because the Celestial Emperor's incarnation did not have an origin. In essence, the Celestial Emperor's incarnation was just the incarnation of the rules. Although he had the power to mobilize the power of heaven and earth, he did not have the slightest bit of power. It could also be said that the Celestial Emperor was the embodiment of the will of heaven and earth. His power was the power of heaven and earth. His origin was the origin of heaven and earth. Igniting the origin of heaven and earth? Stop joking. Not to mention whether Feng Zichen and the others had the ability. Even if they did, they would not dare to do so. If they really did so, They were afraid that as soon as they ignited the origin of heaven and earth, boundless karma would descend on their heads, knocking them down from their positions as the supreme beings of heaven and earth, and causing them to be punished by the heavens and die. This was the inconvenience of using external forces. Even though there were many benefits to using external forces, it was ultimately not as good as the power that one had painstakingly cultivated. It could not be done as one wished, and there was always some kind of barrier. Even if it was extremely slight, it still existed. But fortunately, the Khanate 5 Elements formation was only one of the killing moves that Feng Zichen used to deal with demon ancestor Rahu. Even if he could not succeed, he still had other methods. He swore to take down demon ancestor Rahu. Moreover, the Khanate 5 Elements formation might have succeeded. Didn't he force demon ancestor Rahu to ignite his origin? This kind of method was a life-threatening method. Once it was used, it meant that the other party had no other trump cards and was going to make a final gamble. If that was the case, then Feng Zichen could use his trump card without worry. Today, demon ancestor Rahu is wreaking havoc in the primordial world. I, Ziwei Star Master, hereby request the help of the sacred beasts of the 5 directions to quell the demonic aura of the primordial world and return peace to heaven and earth. Releasing his spiritual will, Feng Zichen began to try to communicate with the scattered spiritual will of the sacred beasts of the 5 directions in order to obtain their help to augment the Khanate 5 Elements formation. This was not the first time this formation had appeared in the primordial world. On the eve of the Demon Clan's massacre, the Khanate 5 Elements formation had appeared in the hands of the 5 sacred beasts to obstruct Donghuang Tai, who had entered the primordial chaos Dao realm. With the help of this formation, the 5 sacred beasts only relied on the incarnations of the sage to be perfection to block Donghuang Tai's advancement. If Donghuang Tai did not have the Bell of Chaos, he would not have been able to break this formation. From this, one could see how powerful this formation was. And this was only the incarnations of the 5 sacred beasts. If the true bodies of the 5 sacred beasts were to make a move, together with the Khanate 5 Elements flag, they would be able to set up the Khanate 5 Elements formation. In the era of the decline of the Demon Clan and the decline of the Witch Clan, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the power of this formation was the best in the primordial world. In the blink of an eye, Feng Zichen's consciousness spread to the entire primordial world, and he also felt 5 vast wills in 5 mysterious regions. That was the will of the 5 elements sacred beasts. Each one of them was comparable to a saint. If the 5 elements sacred beasts worked together, even Dao ancestor Hongjun could fight against them. Of course, whether they could win or not was another matter. Although the 5 elements sacred beasts were strong, they usually needed to suppress a level 4 land to stabilize the primordial world. Therefore, they could not be born unless it was a great calamity of the world. And now, dozens of primordial chaos experts were fighting. The situation in the primordial world seemed to be extremely dangerous. But in reality, both sides had restrained themselves. While fighting with their lives on the line, they were also trying their best to restrain their strength to prevent the primordial world from collapsing. This could be seen from the fact that the primordial world was still safe and sound after the battle had gone on for so long. Otherwise, it would be strange if the primordial world was not shattered into pieces when dozens of primordial chaos experts fought with all their might. In the end, the destruction of the primordial world was not beneficial to either side. The primordial world had not fallen into a great calamity, so the 5 elements sacred beasts could not be born. They needed to continue suppressing the 4 extremes of the primordial world. At this moment, it was indeed difficult to get the 5 elements sacred beasts to attack by force. However, this was not a problem for Feng Zichen. Right now, he was the incarnation of the Celestial Emperor. Even if it was an incomplete version, he still possessed most of the abilities of the Celestial Emperor. Not to mention releasing the 5 elements sacred beasts, he could still let them leave the 4 extremes for a short period of time. After communicating with the 5 elements sacred beasts, Feng Zichen and the others spoke. Today, in the name of the Celestial Emperor, Imperial Edict. I grant the 5 elements sacred beasts the right to travel in the primordial world. With a thought, Fengzichen gave the 5 elements sacred beasts an imperial edict, granting them the right to travel in the primordial world. Of course, he was not the real celestial emperor after all. His power was limited. Therefore this edict was also limited. And the limitation was, as the celestial emperor's incarnation disappeared, that edict would also lose its power. It would become a piece of waste paper. However, this little bit of time was enough for them to join forces to suppress the demon ancestor, Rahu. Roar, roar, roar. Accompanied by 5 earth-shattering roars, the 5 elements sacred beasts walked out from the 4 extremes. The aura of the ancient ruler of the primordial world swept through the entire primordial world, causing all the living beings of the primordial world to involuntarily prostrate themselves in worship. Whoosh! Knowing that the situation was critical, the 5 elements sacred beasts did not dare to delay. With a flash, they walked into the base of the innate 5 elements 5 directions Great Formation, and personally presided over the operation of the Great Formation. This battle is settled. Seeing the 5 elements sacred beasts walk into the Great Formation, Fengzichen could not help but feel relieved. He let out a sigh of relief and said leisurely, with the 5 elements sacred beasts attacking, the demon ancestor, Rahu, had no hope of winning. After all, they were old enemies. In the primordial world, who hated the demon ancestor, Rahu, the most? It was the 5 elements sacred beasts, the 3 innate clans, and the 5 elements sacred beasts, to end up in such a situation. But it was all thanks to the demon ancestor, Rahu. Therefore, the 5 elements sacred beasts naturally wanted to grind the demon ancestor, Rahu, into ashes to express the hatred in their hearts. And they were the trump card that Fengzichen used to deal with the demon ancestor, Rahu. If not for the 5 elements sacred beasts as his trump card, how could he have the confidence to suppress the demon ancestor, Rahu, who was famous in the primordial world? Fellow Taoist Rahu, it's really been a long time. I've been waiting. I've missed you so much. In the Great Formation, the 5 elements sacred beasts came in front of the demon ancestor, Rahu, and said with killing intent. Boundless anger emitted from their bodies and completely turned into substance. It burned through the void and distorted the laws. I was wondering who gave that kid so much confidence to suppress me. So it's the 5 of you trash. Seeing the 5 elements sacred beasts walk over, the demon ancestor, Rahu, seemed to be a little surprised. But immediately he smiled coldly and said with killing intent, "The 5 of you are the trump cards that the kid specially prepared for me? It really makes me so excited." Bone-chilling killing intent emitted from the body of the demon ancestor, Rahu, completely condensed into substance. It either transformed into the appearance of the 4 immortal swords or the god-slaying spear, attacking the 5 elements sacred beasts. I've really been looking for you for a long time. If you hadn't hidden in the 4 extremes and not come out, I would have skinned you, pulled out your tendons, skinned you, and tortured you to death. In the bone-chilling killing intent, the voice of the demon ancestor, Rahu, echoed with extreme hatred. The 5 elements sacred beasts hated the demon ancestor, Rahu, to the core, but the demon ancestor, Rahu, also hated them to the core. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.